Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Florida Environmental Health Association Last Chance webinar today. Today is a 4-hour webinar. We have 3 speakers coming to you from all different aspects of environmental health. We will be taking attendance during the webinar, and the certificate will be made available to you after the last session. We'll put a link in the chat box so that you'll be able to download the certificate after the last session. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box, but please leave your microphones on mute until I read your question off. And that's about it. With that, I want to introduce Lauren Broom from Space Coast Pool School for our first webinar.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar today. I'm so happy to be on today, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. So this is Florida Pool Courses. We're going to be talking about the public pool fenced-in area. So just within the pool fenced-in area is what we're going to be talking about in this presentation today, not the equipment area or anything else like that. So and this is all based on Florida Health Code. So we're not talking about other states or anything like that. This will be specific to Florida public pool fenced in area. I'm the instructor that will be doing this presentation. I'm Lauren Broom. I used to work for a county health department about 2.5 years ago. I left in August of 2020. I had 17 years in one county doing inspections as an environmental specialist too. So now I'm doing my own business, teach and do education, consulting, stuff like that. So the objectives of this presentation today is to train on how to check your pool area so that it's safe to open it. So make sure it's safe and healthy to open in that fenced-in area. We're going to identify pool closure items within the pool fenced-in area and understand the importance of pool signage. Just trying to make my box here smaller because the GoToWebinar thing kind of blocks everything on me here. All right. So let's talk about the entrance gate requirements. So access through the barrier or fence of that pool area from the dwelling units shall be self-closing, self-latching, lockable gates. It should be a 48-inch minimal height from the ground level on both sides, and the latch should be located at a minimum of 54 inches from the bottom of the gate, or at least 3 inches below the top of the gate on the pool side. So of course, this is one that would be a violation. The gate is getting hung up, and you find that quite a bit on your inspections. So if it's not self-latching and self-closing properly, that would be something that you definitely need to notate on the inspection. Children can get into the pool area very easily, and you could end up with a drowning. So gates and fences are very important. If the self-closing, self-latching gate is also self-locking and is operated by a key lock, an electronic opener, or an integral combination type lock, the operable parts, the operating parts of those locks or openers shall be 34 inches minimum and 48 inches maximum above the finished ground level. So we're talking about those electronic type locks with key fobs or anything like that we're talking about. Some of these homeowners associations like to put in other types of locking mechanisms for their gates other than just the traditional latch that you lift up. Somebody said they're not hearing anything. Is there sound? You guys should be able to hear me. Can you guys not hear me? Can everybody else hear me? Okay, so it's specific to one person that's having trouble. I don't know if, Michael, you can work through it and see in the chat, somebody said they could not hear me, and see if you can walk through with them why they can't hear me.
Got it.
All right, thank you for everybody else letting me know you could hear me. All right, so let's move on. So we're looking at gates. Sometimes they even have like regular locks like that, but they should still have a way for it to self-close and self-latch properly so that children are not able to easily open these gates. All right, entrance gates requirements with buildings and the pool. So doored access points from public rooms such as lobbies or clubhouses need not be through gates if the doors meet the same self-closing, self-latching requirements as a gate. The operable parts used for opening the doors at the access points shall be 45 inches minimum to 48 inches maximum above the finished ground level. The gate should open outward away from the pool area, and a latch lockable gate shall be placed in the fence within 10 feet of the closest point between the pool and the equipment area to allow for service access. You have to make it easy for them to access the pool equipment area from the pool area. So we're talking about clubhouses and that kind of thing, apartments with their main building where bathrooms are and that kind of thing. So here's an instance of child drowning in down in Sunrise in Miami, Florida. It was one of the twin toddlers who fell into the pool in Sunrise, Florida, did die. 2-year-old Jada Roman died, and this all happened on May 6, 2014, and it was due to the child was able to gain access to the apartment complex public pool area in some way. And the mom of these 2 toddlers was the property manager, and she was actually working in the property manager's office, and her children were being watched by a babysitter who basically got distracted. So if we went to this is the pool area they're talking about. There's a hot tub as well. If you went to this link, it would take us to the video for that pool. The twin toddlers got into the pool area through an open gate. So again, probably not self-closing, self-latching properly. So they were able to get in there, and one of them died. The police said that the babysitter went into a bathroom, left that bathroom door open, and heard the TV with cartoons on it in the next room, assuming that the kids were fine out there and they had made their way out of that apartment and into the pool area. All right, so there's a gate maybe that was propped open, and if we look at this, if I can click on this and this will open up the video, you can see how distraught the mom gets in this video. So I just got to X out whatever ad this is. All right, I don't know, make video play.
Who's crafty? Right now, lease a new 2022 Toyota Corolla LE for just $229 a month for 36 months. Toyota, let's go places.
Now at 5, a South Florida mother hearing bad news from fire rescue officials as her 2 kids are found at the bottom of a swimming pool. Witnesses in that area say the woman works in the apartment complex where those kids were found in the pool. Team 6 reporter Hank Testa has the latest from Sunrise.
Doing the best they can for a distraught mom. Sunrise police, firefighters dealing with raw emotion. 2 toddlers, a twin boy and girl, found at the bottom of an apartment complex pool. Neighbors in shock.
Kind of broke down because it could have been my child.
All right, so that basically tells you right there. I'm trying to X out of this and go back to the PowerPoint. So that's the importance of the barriers and the gates and making sure that we are checking them as inspectors very closely underneath the fence as well, so that there's no gaps that little toddlers, I mean, some of them are tiny. They can get under those gaps if you're not checking the fence around the entire perimeter. They really are determined sometimes to get into a pool area. So that fencing and gates are very, very important. So all public pools shall be surrounded by a minimum 48-inch high fence or other approved substantial barrier. The fence shall be continuous around the perimeter of the pool area that is not otherwise blocked or obstructed by adjacent buildings or structures, and shall adjoin with itself or abut to the adjacent members. Fencing consideration shall be given to the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, CPSC, publication that they gave out and is provided since March of 2005 that has all the guidelines on their website. And some of the main highlights here. So children, they look at that pool area and they really will go to that pool. Especially, we probably have very high drowning rates of probably children at this age that are not identified with autism. They really believe that there's a lot of drowning in relation to autism and autism spectrum disorder as well. So it's just most children are not identified with an autism spectrum disorder until they're like 5 years old. So when they're 2 or 3, it gets really hard. So again, we're looking at the CPSC requirements. Like if there's a chain link fence, it's 1 1/4 distance between the mesh in there. And then if it's vertical members, which is what we see a lot of with our fencing, then it should be 4-inch sphere or disc shouldn't be able to fit between the vertical members of the fence. So this is a video that actually somebody shared with me, and I thought, since he's in here, it shows a gap in a fence.
Go through it again. Hey, go through it again.
And this really shows that a little child can fit through that fence and get right to that pool area if there is one member missing in that fence. So check your fences very closely when you do the inspections. This is a gate. This was at this is an apartment complex pool. Somebody have a question? So this is an apartment complex pool where I did a class in Kissimmee, Florida, and it was new construction, only 2 years old. So you'll be able to see what happens with this gate. So when you're out there on these new construction pools, make sure you're checking the gates and open all the way out before you give your approval.
All right, so this is a brand new pool, 2 years old. This is their gate, and it gets hung up on the sidewalk. So this is something you want to check on your gates, that entrance gates that go into the pool, because this makes it so it gets hung up. It's not self-closing at this point.
You can see the
scratch
mark.
It gets hung up on here quite a bit because there's a mark on the sidewalk. The other gate on the other side gets hung up on the pavers. We'll show you that. It does self-close properly afterwards. Maybe slowly. It does, but that's part of, it's not self-closing.
So check those gates, even with your new construction, because if they do the elevation of the sidewalk wrong, open the gate all the way open, make sure it doesn't get stuck. While we were there, the pool technician that services that pool came in, and he just propped it open the whole time, and he's walking back and forth between his truck out front past the clubhouse building and walking back, and at any point in time a child could get right into that pool area while he's not there. So check those kind of things. Pool equipment area inside the pool. Pool equipment areas within the fenced-in pool area should be locked up, and it should be inaccessible to the general public so that they can't go and change things on the pool operator. Animals and glass in the fenced-in area. No animals within the pool fenced-in area or within 50 feet of the pool water edge when there is no fence. The exception is service animals are the only animals allowed in that area inside the pool fenced-in area, but they're not allowed into the water. And they need to be a service animal, not a emotional support animal. No glass within the fenced-in area or within 50 feet of the pool water edge when there is no fence. And this is just a pool operator had found glass in their skimmer basket. So this is why we worry about it. And it's very hard to find broken glass at the bottom of a pool. And people can cut their feet on it. This was a condo pool down in South Florida. Somebody called me about this for consulting and that kind of thing. And they took this picture of a homeowner walking her dog along the pool area, and it's not a service animal, and she's clearly inside the fenced in area. We did identify that they did not have a condo exemption or anything like that. So that wouldn't matter anyway. So that animal is not a service animal, and they were battling with this resident about her walking this animal in here. So any glass of any kind, animals shouldn't be within 50 feet of the pool edge when there's no fence, or within the fenced in pool area. Life-saving equipment. So all swimming pools shall be installed with a shepherd's hook that's securely attached to a one-piece pole that's not less than 16 feet in length. Retractable poles are not allowed. At least one 18-inch diameter life-saving ring with sufficient rope attached to it to reach all parts of the pool from the pool deck. Decorative rings are not allowed, and it's really highly recommended, and I thought it was going to be added to the code eventually, that life rings be United States Coast Guard approved, where there's labeling on it. And the safety equipment shall be mounted in a conspicuous place and readily available for use. You should be able to see it very clearly from the pool deck. Mounted on the fence. It shouldn't be hidden on a sidewall or behind a building or built into vines growing all over them or anything like that. Pools that are greater than 50 feet in length shall have multiple units with at least one shepherd's hook and one life-saving ring located on each of the longer sides of the pool. So I remember when I went out and did an inspection, I wrote up a pool greater than 50 feet, and I come back for re-inspection, and they put both life hooks and both life rings together on one side of the pool. And what was the point of that's not going to help anything if somebody is drowning. Spa pools under 200 square feet of surface area and also our interactive water features and wading pools with 2 feet or less of water depth are exempt from the life hook and life ring requirement. So this picture would be an example of a pool that's longer than 50 feet that would be required to have 2 sets of life hooks and life rings on the longer sides of the pool. That, again, needs to be conspicuous. Should be able to easily find it when you're doing your inspections. This is a little video. This was down in, I don't remember if this is a Fort Myers class or a Tampa class. This was this year. We're out at the pool, and I'm teaching a CPO class, and then we go out to the pool area. It's at a hotel, and this was the life hook and the pole it was on at this class.
Okay, it's doing video now. So show how it bends. Yeah, because it's not, this is a life hook on a retrofitted pole, obviously, with this PVC piece here. And it bends, so it's not one single pole. And you can tell that they cut this right there. All right, perfect.
All right, okay. So be looking for stuff like that when you're out on the pool deck area. The life hook, again, 16-foot long pole, not retractable. Look at those bolts and wing nuts. Make sure that they don't look like they're rusted through and about to break off. If you go pull somebody out, that's not going to be helpful. Make sure that both bolts and wing nuts are there. Make sure that the pole is in good condition. Sometimes people come and they bend them. They put them over their knees. You get teenagers that break in and do stuff. So check the condition of the life hook. This is showing a retractable pole. So that how you know it's retractable is you'll have that little white piece in the middle. You turn it and you can retract that pole down. You can use that for skimmers and everything else, but we cannot have those for our life hooks. One single metal pole. And don't retrofit, they shouldn't retrofit like they did on that other one in the video. These are decorative life rings, definitely not allowed to be used as a life ring in a public pool area. I know we've been seeing a lot of that just because of lack of inventory and supply chain shortages, but they still shouldn't be using these. They're not going to be approved life rings for the pool area. These are the ones that you'd be finding out there. This is actually a U.S. Coast Guard approved life ring. And some of the things we want to check afterwards with life rings is make sure that you're looking at the rope. And is there actually a rope tied to it? And is it long enough to reach all parts of the pool? That's the other thing. And make sure that you're looking, they tend to dry rot. These nylon ropes tend to dry rot. So make sure you're looking at the condition of the life ring. The rope is actually tied to it and not, sometimes it looks like it is, but if you lift up and take the life ring off of where it's hanging, the rope is actually behind it, but it's not tied to it. So always check that and check the rope it's tied to and make sure it's not dry rotted or frayed. All right, pool rule signs. So section 454 of the Florida Building Code is where all of that got moved to for pool rule signs. You probably get contacted by like property managers and community association managers all the time. Where are the required rules for a pool rule sign? And they're looking in 64E-9 Florida Administrative Code and they can't find it. So it moved a long time ago to section 454. You can copy and paste it and send it to them if they're trying to get a new rule sign made. Owners may create their own signs if they include all the requirements for the pool rule signs and they meet sizing requirements and have everything required from 454 Florida Building Code. And this is for ease. Compliant signs can be located on the internet as well. So there are companies that will actually sell, you put in your state and it'll bring up the approved state pool, public pool rules sign for them. If a new pool rule sign is required in rule, owners may create a separate sign to meet those requirements and post next to the old sign. So if there's a new rule that's added in, it doesn't mean they have to make a whole new sign, right? They can make a separate little sign and put next to it. Health Department code doesn't care about technically the prettiness of the sign as long as it's clear, legible, and it meets all the requirements in 454. It doesn't say it has to be all on one slab of a sign. They could have different signs. If our job isn't to make it look not tacky. So if they don't care, they're allowed to do that as long as it meets all the requirements. And as long as the new rules don't negate any required rules. So if they wanted to add a rule onto their sign, I got called about this all the time about swim diapers. It doesn't negate one of the required rules. They can put it on there if they want to, and they can make a separate sign with it, and it doesn't negate one of our required rules. They can do that if they want. They'll be dealing with the repercussions of it, but you know, because people will complain. So you can add any rules you want to the rule sign if the new rules do not contradict with the required rules. So this picture, which is blocked by my GoToWebinar thing on the side, but it is a pool rule sign over on the right-hand side. So the rule sign shall be posted within the pool fenced-in area and easily visible. Again, it cannot be just hidden somewhere. It can't be on the side of the pool. And technically, they shouldn't have it just on the walking into the pool area on the side out to the parking lot or whatever. It should be visible inside of the fenced-in area. It should be replaced if damaged or missing, and it shouldn't be obstructed by vegetation, landscaping, or pool furniture, so that it's easily readable. It shall be complete with all the required information, meaning the blanks are filled in with stickers or they use black permanent marker. If it's written in black marker or stickers are used, remember the information can fade or come off the sign, so you should check regularly for fading and sticker loss. This is a rule sign that for a spa that I just took out of class in November in Kissimmee at a hotel. and this was their spa rule sign. It's not meeting requirements for the state rule. If you know what those rules are, it has some stuff on it, but it's missing some stuff, and it may not be in the correct sizing requirements either. So make sure you're looking at the spa rule sign, look at the section 454 of the Florida Building Code, make sure that you have all the required rules. Like they're missing the maximum water temperature on here. The 104, stuff like that is not on here. They don't have any spa hours, nothing about food, drink, or anything else. What's required in our pool rule signs required here, plus bathing load or pool load's not here. We don't have spa hours. They did not have a separate sign with that information either. And they cannot claim the pool rule sign covers that information for the spa. Spas have to be separate rules from the pool. So this is a pool rule sign. It's mounted inside the fenced in area. They have their bathing load filled in, their pool hours filled in, and one of the new rules added in this year, January 1st of 2023, that you should all be checking for. So the other rules are in minimum 1-inch lettering. You have no diving required on the pool rule sign in minimum 4-inch lettering. And then in minimum 2-inch lettering, they were required to add pool maximum depth, and then fill in the blank with the maximum depth of their pool. And again, if they had the regular rule sign and it had everything on it except for that pool maximum depth, they could make a separate sign and put it directly underneath or next to the pool rule sign, as long as it meets the sizing requirements and everything next to the pool rule sign. Okay, it doesn't look as nice. The other thing they added this year as well is the plastic bottles for commercially bottled water allowed on the pool wet deck and in the pool area for hydration. So people aren't gonna pass out and that kind of thing. But if it's not a commercially bottled water, say they added a packet of lemonade to it, that's not commercially bottled water anymore. So if you see something, you can write it up. You really can't say anything to the pool patron because we don't inspect them, we inspect the pool. You just write as a violation on the report and send the report on its way to the owner of the property, who is responsible to make sure people are following their posted pool rule signs, because we're not inspecting the people that use the pool, we inspect the pool, and then the owner is responsible through their permit of the conditions and the violations. This is a spa rule sign. Again, this is what it should look like in Florida. It also has to have a minimum 2-inch lettering, the spa pool maximum depth. Of course, they didn't fill that in. That blank is empty here, but they did have their hours and their bathing load posted. So again, you've got all the required rules. So you see the maximum water temperature 104. Children under 12 must have adult supervision, that whole long paragraph about pregnant woman, blah, 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 and then maximum use of 15 minutes. So if we compare this spa rule sign to this spa rule sign, you can clearly see the non-compliance in this sign, okay? So this one on the right is good, except for the blank for the maximum depth not filled in. This is another pool rule sign, but I put this one here to show you instead of stickers, they're using black permanent marker. I really enjoy the pool hours, dawn to dusk. They meant dusk, and they could simply come in and turn that into a K, but you kind of know what they meant. They're putting dawn to dusk, and they're trying to cover all of their change of times, you know, during the year and that kind of thing. But that's a pool rule sign. This is an older rule sign, so it's missing the maximum water depth and the commercially bottled water part and that kind of thing. But I put this here to have you remember to check the fading of the black permanent marker and make sure that blanks are filled in. This one was one that somebody put up and they didn't think about it, the property manager. Pool hours are dusk to dawn. So the pool's closed all day and it's open all night. They meant to flip that around, dawn to dusk. All right, what about splash pads and water feature signs? So this is the splash pad and water feature signs. So you can see all the required rules on here, and then they're required to have the pool maximum depth here as well. And then the no diving and 4-inch lettering. So of course they're required to have number 6 and number 7 on there because they're a splash pad or water feature. That do not swallow the pool water. It is recirculated, and do not use the pool if you're ill with diarrhea. Pool rule signs for pools that have sun shelves. So this rule sign is specifically for pools that have sun shelves in them. The added rule is warning, drop off at sun shelf edge is blank feet. And it's required to be in 4-inch lettering on the sign. So here is the approved rule sign for any pool that has a sun shelf. Okay, so number 7 is added in, and you see it's bigger because it has to be in the 4-inch lettering. So this was one that I found off one of those compliant company online. And then this was one I saw out in the field for a pool. Look how lengthy that is, but doesn't that look pretty? That sign's got everything required on it. They have their hours filled in, their bathing load filled in, the maximum drop off for the sun shelf, their pool maximum depth, and they have their no diving and 4-inch lettering. Beautiful sign, perfect sign right here for a pool with a sun shelf. Night swimming and pool hours. Pool signs cannot have night swimming hours unless they meet the following requirements. Lighting certification completed by a licensed pool contractor or electrician in the state of Florida. The lighting certification form or something like that submitted to the local health agency office, and the property has received an updated annual operating permit from the local health agency that states that night swimming is now allowed. It says N or Y. You've gotten the lighting certification form, they've signed off on it, they're licensed. Okay, change it in EHD, put yes for night swimming, and now you're required to mail a new updated permit to that property owner or management office so that they can post the new permit up that says they're allowed to have night swimming. Okay. This is the lighting certification form right here that has been used. It's not an official DH form, but it can be used and filled in and marked off very easily. And there's a signature at the bottom for the licensed person to sign off and give their information as a licensed contractor or electrician. And they can turn this into their local county health office. Swim diapers on the pool rule sign. No, it's not required. It's recommended. Any public health official would love to recommend swim diapers, but you can't say it's required. Pool rule signs can include a rule that requires the use of swim diapers. This is not in state code and cannot be regulated by the local health agency or local building department. But always remember, swim diapers would include all ages, children and adults, because we have adults that are incontinent as well. Poolside showers. Poolside showers are required to be located within the fenced-in pool area. They should be operable when the pool is open. It should work. They're only required for outdoor pools, shall be easily visible on the pool deck, shall not be obstructed by pool furniture or vegetation or landscaping, and the lever or handle should have a way for anyone to be able to use the poolside shower. So if you put the lever way up, somebody who's disabled and children should still be able to use that poolside shower. So this one's kind of hidden in some vegetation. So this one I would probably, it's getting close to the point where you'd want to write that up. And remember, when we get into our type A and type E type violations, deck showers are on there, but they're not a type A, but there is a type E violation that means corrective action by or the later of June 30th or 90 days after you've given them notice on the report for a missing or inoperable deck shower or poolside shower. All right. Meaning that if it hasn't been corrected and you've given them June 30th, if this hasn't been proven that it's been corrected, you should have something in EHD saying that even if they go in and pay for their permit, they shouldn't be able to print their permit off the internet after they've paid for it. Because if they haven't submitted anything showing even, correspondence to you saying that this got fixed, how it got fixed, when it got fixed, you shouldn't release the permit for any type E's that they've given. Now, if it goes past the 90 days and it's past June 30th, that's different. But if you've given and you've got that June 30th because it's more than 90 days when you did the inspection, by June 30th, type E violations should be corrected like these types. And if they're not, they should not get an operating permit for the new year. Shower before entering is required on pool rule signs. It's important for many reasons for showering before pool patrons enter. It's to help remove suntan lotion, sunscreen, and other user contamination that could otherwise enter the water. It binds with your free chlorine in the water, raises your combined chlorine levels in the water, which then you're going to have a chlorine smell. People are going to have burning eyes. It helps the disinfectant work better, okay, due to decreasing that user contamination. And people have about 0.14 grams of fecal matter in their buttocks, which can contaminate the water. Showering before they enter will help reduce this statistic a little bit. Water clarity. The pool water shall be 0.5 NTUs, which is nephelometric turbidity units or less, and the main drain cover must be readily visible from the pool deck using our eyes. Pool inspectors may use their eyes, and if the main drain cover is not visible from the pool deck, you're going to close the pool. This condition is an immediate public pool closure item for the local health agency, and you should close the pool if this condition exists and correct before reopening. So this is a spa. Clearly that main drain is only 3 or 4 feet down and it's barely visible. You cannot really see it. That would be a closure. And then this is a pool on the deep end and you can't even see that main drain cover at all from that vantage point. And so these would be closure items. This is bad due to poor water clarity. This is a good example. This is good water clarity here. We can clearly see the main drain cover from up on the deck in this hot tub. Now the condition of your Virginia Graham Baker VGB main drain cover. Improper installation or poor condition of the main drain cover is a huge entrapment risk to the pool users. The pool shall be closed if the main drain cover is missing, unsecured, improperly secured, if it's damaged or does not meet the requirements of the local health agency, meaning is it not a current approved VGB cover? Is it an expired cover? They all expire based on different time periods, based on environmental testing in a lab from the main drain cover manufacturer. So this one has a big hole in it. That would be a closure item. And then this one is loose from the frame. So it came loose from the screws and everything. So pay attention to these because entrapment is a big, big deal. These drain covers are a big deal. So you need to pay attention to them down there. So a missing drain cover is a serious safety hazard for entrapment. This one, you can see there's kind of a gap underneath where these leads are getting to. This one has a huge hole in it. This one is missing a screw. And of course, this one has a big hole in it again. But even the little holes, you close it for any holes, improperly secured, damage, anything. The main drain covers are a big deal here. What about our skimmer equalizer line VGB covers? So equalizer lines are direct suction lines and thus are also a safety hazard. Equalizer line inlets need to be protected by an ASME ANSI A112.19.8 compliant cover or grate, which is an approved VGB cover. And when the cover is damaged, broken, or missing, the facility shall be closed until it's replaced. So what is a skimmer equalizer line? So here's a skimmer, you got your weir door, here's a skimmer basket in the pool deck, and on the side wall of the pool, below the level of the skimmer, there's this little round cover here. And this is allowing water, if water drops below the level of the skimmer, you still have water that's able to go back to your pump so that the pool pump isn't sucking air and burning that pump out. So the skimmer equalizer line is installed in some of our public pools to allow water to still get to that pump so that we're saving our pump. But this is on direct suction if that pool is on direct suction. So you need to make sure you have an approved VGB cover here. And this is a lot of times what our approved VGB covers look like over top of that skimmer equalizer line. This was a pool guy that posted this on social media, and he couldn't figure out what he was missing. He's down in Fort Myers, and he couldn't figure out what he was missing on this one cover he pulled out of the bottom of the hot tub. So let's look.
It's not a light.
He's like, it's not a light. What is this thing? He walks over to show us what he pulled out. And this is what broke right here. And that's a skimmer equalizer line that broke, because it was that line with no cover just below his skimmer. Vacuum line covers are important as well. I know moving forward, new pools are not being built with vacuum lines anymore, because we're assuming everybody's going to be buying a pool vacuum, a portable pool vacuum, because of safety reasons. But we're still going to be dealing with our old public pools that were built with vacuum lines. So the vacuum suction line shall be protected with a threaded plug or cover when it's not in use, and vacuuming of the pool shall not occur while the pool is open. So this is some of our, one of our types of vacuum line covers. It's a spring-loaded cover. And this is the vacuum line we're talking about. So this would screw in there, and when they take their line off, if they're vac hosing the pool, that should immediately shut down onto that opening again. Sometimes they have screw-on type of covers, and they'll take them off and not put them back on. So you got to find your vacuum lines and make sure those covers are on there, because this happened in an apartment complex pool about 5 to 6 years ago in Brevard County. Little girl got her arm stuck in a vacuum line because the cover was sitting on the bottom of the pool. Okay, so check those vacuum line covers. Vacuum pump wasn't on, but her arm was small enough to get in there, but then she couldn't get it out, and then it could lead to her drowning. There had been other stories, like a gentleman that decided to stick his male appendage inside of a vacuum line, and then he couldn't get that appendage out. And I actually found it was from the 90s, but it was a public pool at a hotel, and there was a 911 call that with the guy that got stuck, and they were like, oh my gosh, you know, on the call. So it happens. People have some great ideas sometimes, so that's why we need to look at those covers. It is a type A immediate closure item if the plug or cover is missing or broken. Okay, so make sure that you are checking those and you close the pool immediately if they cannot fix it while you're there. Cleanliness of the pool and deck. The pool water and deck shall be maintained so that it's free of sediment, floating debris, visible dirt, and algae. Pool needs to be resurfaced when the pool surface cannot be maintained in a safe and sanitary condition. Inner pool tile edge shall be maintained so that there is no scum line. And scum lines are deposits that form at or slightly above the water line. So this is, of course, a green pool. That would be obviously some cleanliness of that pool is not being taken care of very well. This one as well. And then this one is where they've got algae, the water's level is dropped, but then we've got algae up on the rollout gutter. These are a pool that really needed to get resurfaced a long time ago. And so there's cracks and everything in the pool surface, and in those cracks and bad surface is allowing black algae to grow in that area. Black spot algae. So this is falling under our cleanliness. Green algae, yellow mustard algae. And this is a scum line. Okay, you see, a lot of times it's easier to see it on a public pool when you look at the white depth markers on the inner tile edge. You can see that scum line going right across that white background very easily if they're not cleaning it regularly. What about pool toys and floats in the pool? Floating and climb on devices, objects, or toys that are not part of the approved pool design shall not be tethered in the pool or installed without an approved engineering alteration application to the local health agency or department. So this was an example here. This was a pool down in South Florida. They called me because they had aquatic fitness equipment. So I kind of wanted to bring this forward because I wrote a variance for this company. It has to be applied by each pool for the variance to be able to have, and they have to meet very specific provisions in the variance in order to have the aquatic fitness equipment. So same rule applies for the floats and all that other stuff for aquatic fitness equipment. This would be like poles, platforms, aqua bikes, trampolines, and underwater hockey goals. When you go to your really big fancy clubs down in South Florida, or you go to any of your parks and rec facilities or anything like that, they're going to be YMCAs, any of those type of places that might have classes. If they're having aquatic fitness classes, when you come in, ask about this kind of stuff, because they're not allowed to have it in the pool if it wasn't built with the engineering approval of the pool. So a lot of times, even your parks and rec facilities have like the platforms when they do their swim lessons. They put them at the bottom of the pool, and now they're not meeting Florida Health Code currently right now, the way it's written, for obstructions. So they may have a class like this. This is an aqua pole that they use. And so this all started off with a health inspector that was aware of it, walked in, they were having a class, and they saw the aqua pole as a class. There was a bunch of people with them in the pool with an instructor. Well, it didn't meet code. The inspector correctly wrote it up as a violation. I had this one installed in one of my condo pools in my county, and I worked in a little tiny county. They decided for their aquatic fitness aerobics for the older ladies, on both sides of the pool, they were going to install this metal grab bar in the rollout gutter. They tried to go to variance board for it, and it got denied. So they had to remove it. So look for things like this. This is an aqua bike. This is a trampoline underwater. And then this is this is underwater hockey. Okay. This is more platforms. This is kind of like the platforms that we're talking about, that they make their own with like PVC pipes sometimes even at parks and rec facilities. And this is another fitness equipment underwater. So public pools in Florida are required to maintain standards according to 64E9, section 454. So if the public pool does not allow the above rules and continues to operate the public pool with those obstructions, the local health agency may close the facility, remove the facility's annual operating permit, could fine the facility, or take other local enforcement actions. So this was the real world example of an inspection violation at the Wycliffe Golf and Country Homeowners Association on January 15th, 2021. And the inspector wrote this up down in that county correctly. And this was the email that was received. So, and this is the person that called me about the what do we do with this, and then we wrote a variance. So they said they received a call from one of their clients in Delray Beach indicating that the health inspector had come over and gave them a citation for violation of 64E9. They're conducting a circuit class using aqua bikes, trampolines, and the aqua pole. This is a private country club conducting a class in one of their community pools. And see, some people don't realize that's a public pool here in Florida. So the inspector gave them notice that this type of activity cannot be conducted in the public facility, and gave them until June 30th to either apply for a variance or remove everything and meet code requirements. So this person had no knowledge of it. They said they even checked with the AEA, which is, forget what it stands for. It's a big association for aquatic aerobics or something like that, all the aquatic fitness people. And they had no information about this. She said, I see this everywhere that aquatic fitness is done in a facility. So I said, the inspector just showed up at the right time at the right place, and they're correct in what they wrote up. And she's like, okay, well, I know others, even like I did this whole variance presentation at the Aquatic Professionals National Conference when it was in St. Petersburg last year. And I had somebody in the class from Florida State University. And she's like looking at me as I'm going through this presentation specifically on this. And she's like, oh my God, I'm not telling my health inspector about this stuff. Okay. So there's even universities that have this kind of stuff. So if you want to know, walk in, ask open-ended questions when you do your inspection. So this was the actual health department inspection report, and they cited it under number 48, workout equipment observed in pool. And it was done down in Delray Beach. Okay, they gave them 6 months for correction, next inspection. So the violation is this section out of the Florida Building Code right here, 454.1.2.6, where if it wasn't approved as basically part of the original engineered design, it's an obstruction of the pool and it can't be there unless you get an approved variance. And then you have to meet all the provisions of the variance afterwards. All right, outside of that whole variance and aquatic fitness equipment inside the fenced-in area, tile break marking for slope transition. So any transition the pool's floor slope shall occur at a minimum of 5 feet of water depth. The slope transition must have a 2 to 6 inch wide dark contrasting tile marking across the bottom and must extend up both sides of the pool at the transition point. The marking shall be continuous except for recessed grouting. So this is what we're talking about. You've got the rope, the safety line, and then you've got your tile break marking on the bottom of the pool after that. So this would be where your slope line would be, and then the tile break, okay? Slope break safety line. A slope transition must have a safety line mounted by use of recessed cup anchors 2 feet before the contrasting marking that the tile marking. So 2 feet before that, you should have the slope break safety line towards the shallow end. The safety line shall have visible floats at maximum 7-foot intervals. Okay. So again, the safety line, the blue line over here is the tile break line. 2 feet before that is where the safety line should be. Here's one. All lovely pictures that I got from some local Florida pool operators. All right, pool ladders. Maintain the pool ladders as per original construction of the pool. If you're uncertain on placement or number, consult the local health agency. 4 feet unobstructed area on the pool deck measured from the ladder. So we need to have 4 feet unobstructed area out from the pool ladder where it's at. Ladders shall be flush with the pool wall or anchored in the wall if by design. Ladders shall be secured or anchored so that they are not loose. Ladder rungs should not be loose or missing. Ladders with sharp edges shall be repaired immediately. And ladders with plastic covers near the pool wall shall be present. I've heard of a story from another instructor that said they knew of a person that got their fingers cut off on a pool ladder that was loose. And when their husband got on the pool ladder, their hand was behind it and they were missing the white cup things that go on the ends of the ladder where it's underwater. And so the sharp edge of the metal, when he got on with his full weight, trapped 2 of her fingers and cut them off. All right. Instead of just getting pinned and maybe breaking them, which it still hurts, but at least you didn't cut them off. It's that sharp metal that does that. So look at things like that. Make sure the ladder is meeting all requirements. This one is not flush with the pool wall. Yes, it's not a cross brace ladder. Remember, if they hadn't been resurfaced yet, they didn't have to replace with a cross brace ladder until then. This was an older pool that hadn't gotten resurfaced per new code. You can see that the gutter edge has a lighter bullnose tile color, probably not slip resistant either because that was all updated for resurfacing. So when they resurface, they would need to update to a cross brace ladder. But with this picture, it's the gap between the wall and where the underwater where the ladder is. There's a gap there. This one should be fixed to the pool wall, but it came loose. So look for things like that. Look at the rungs. Who the heck knows what they were trying to do here, but not correct. So look for stuff like that. That should be obvious. You may see anything that's metal like handrails and ladders when they're in the water. You see the dark staining. That's galvanized corrosion. Galvanic corrosion is due to high total dissolved solid levels in the water, along with a little bit of electrical current that's in the water. It causes that staining there. Handrails. Maintain pool handrails per original construction of the pool. Again, if you're uncertain about placement or number, consult the local health agency. You have to have 4 feet unobstructed area on the pool deck measured out from the handrail. So we're talking about like when you got places that and where they place chairs relative to handrails and ladders, and do they have 4 feet unobstructed between that chair and that handrail or ladder? Shall be properly secured or anchored to the pool deck and inside of the pool. Okay. So this is a picture of a handrail. I know the pool surface looks horrible. That's not the point of this picture. Look at the handrail. This picture is where I was able to lift that handrail right out of the pool deck. So check those. All right. Again, type A violation for handrail and ladder that requires immediate closure of the pool is if they're missing, inoperable, or you deem is a safety hazard because it's loose. If it's not deemed as a severe safety hazard, but it's loose or missing the H2A cover, then it's a type E violation. All right. Pool surface condition. Pools need to be refinished when the pool surfaces cannot be maintained in a safe and sanitary manner. Pools need to be constructed of concrete or other impervious and structurally rigid material. And pools need to be watertight, free from structural cracks, and have a non-toxic, smooth, and slip-resistant finish. So this pool isn't meeting those requirements. Needs to be resurfaced at this point. This is the same pool. When you start seeing discoloration down at the bottom of the pool, it's probably pitting and that surface is deteriorated at that point. But I could see cracks in the rollout gutter, cracks in the shallow end of the pool. It's clearly, it needs to be resurfaced. It's not meeting that part of the code anymore. Obviously this one as well. Broken tiles. So tiles shall not have sharp edges exposed that may cause injury to bathers. This would be in the gutters, step edge tiles, pool deck, and tiles along skimmers. So this is up on a rollout gutter, and they have tile there, but part of the tile broke. So now there's sharp edges there, and that would be a closure item right there, because that would be deemed a sharp tile edge where somebody would place their hand and they could cut their hand on it. So you could close for that. Step edge tiles and markings. The tile needs to be slip resistant. It's a bullnose tile that's going to be a slip resistant 3/4 inch segment that's placed on the tread or horizontal surface, with a 2-inch segment that's placed on the riser or vertical surface. And where the gutter is used as the top step, the tile on the gutter for the width of the steps shall be slip resistant for the gutter at that location. So check your step edge tiles, make sure they're not broken. If somebody's replaced step edge tiles and it's a new pool and they put in like light blue, that's not going to meet requirements either. So again, type A, there is a type A and a type E violation here for step markings. If over 50% of the tread length of the step edge markings is missing or faded to a Munsell color value of greater than or equal to 6, then it's going to be a type A. And then if it is the other one, it's type E, where it's over 10% of the tread length. Wet deck area. 4 feet unobstructed pool deck area around the outside of the pool, water perimeter, curb, ladder, handrail, diving boards, diving towers, pool slides, waterfalls, water features, starting blocks, planters, or lifeguard chairs. Shall be kept clean so it's free from sediment, debris, visible dirt, and algae. So make sure that you're looking at the deck, making sure that it looks good, that we have our 4 feet unobstructed area. We don't have any slip hazards. So the pool deck shall be uniformly slipped away from the pool or to deck drains to prevent standing water, because that's where you can get that slip hazard near the pool. Textured deck finishes that provide pitting and crevices of more than 3 16-inch deep that accumulate soil are prohibited. And if settling or weathering occurs that would cause standing water, the original slopes need to be restored or put in corrective drains. So that we're worried about standing water on the pool deck. It's a slip hazard. This was a pool that I inspected that was only 2 years old when I did a class down in Kissimmee this year. And they had all these little divots, and it was in the travertine, and this is along the pool edge. That edge of the concrete is to the pool. And so those are greater than 3 16-inch deep and would accumulate water and debris. So somehow that passed inspection, and it should have been filled in within 4 feet of the pool edge. I remember when I went out with one of our engineering consultants, and they had the most beautiful, it was their construction inspection, and they had the most beautiful travertine. And he said, it's beautiful, but you got to fill in, you got to seal 4 feet from the pool edge because of the divots and holes in the travertine not meeting that code part. So this was the same kind of deal here. All right, look for cracks, tripping hazards within 4 feet of the pool edge. Write all that up. This is where they're cleaning up standing water on their pool deck. It's a slip hazard, so make sure that you're checking for that. Floor drains, this is what we're talking about here with the floor, the sloping the deck off, and then they've got drains here so that that water can flow to the drains and not stand on the pool deck. Depth markers. So permanent depth markings are followed by the following designations in full or abbreviated words: feet, FT, inches, or IN, in minimum 4-inch high numbers and letters on a contrasting background. The depth marker shall indicate the actual depth within 3 inches at normal operating water level when measured 3 feet from the pool wall. At a minimum, the marking shall be located on both sides of the pool at the shallow end, slope break, deep end wall, and deep point if located more than 5 feet from the deep end wall. Depth marking shall be legible from inside the pool and from the pool deck. And the maximum perimeter distance between the depth markings is 25 feet. So here's some good depth markers. They've got their no diving marking tile over here. It's all tiled, so we don't want to see stickers, no more stenciling or anything like that. When a curb is provided, the depth marking shall be installed on the inside and outside or on the top of the pool curb. When a pool curb is not provided, the depth markings need to be located on the inside vertical wall at or above the water level and on the edge of the deck within 2 feet of the pool water. When there's an open type gutter design, depth markers shall be located on the back of the gutter wall. And depth marking requirements would also apply to spas and hot tubs. So that, of course, look for missing, faded, that kind of thing, depth markings in your pool area. So this one is where it's come off or faded off or whatever. So this would be a violation. And again, there's a type A violation for depth markers. If there's 3 or more markers missing or not legible, then you would close the pool. If it's 1 or 2 markers missing or not legible, or the use of unapproved markers, then it's a type E violation. No diving markings. So you have to have 4-inch high no diving markings installed along the perimeter of the pool on the top of the pool curb or deck within 2 feet of the pool water with maximum distance of 25 feet between the markings. A 6-inch tile with 4-inch or larger red international no diving symbol could be substituted for the spelling of no diving on the tile for the markings. Older pools with no diving stenciled on the deck shall repaint the lettering when it fades, but once the pool is resurfaced or decking is redone, the no diving can no longer be stenciled and needs to be replaced to current standards in the Florida Building Code. And so this is going to be a couple of pictures here. This is the no diving international tile, or they could spell out the no diving on tile as well. It's just more costly to spell it out. Again, there's a type A and type B violation. If there's 3 or more markers missing or illegible, it's a type A. If there's any markers that are not legible or missing or use of unapproved markers, it's a type E. Marking requirements for pools with sun shelves. So when there's a sun shelf installed, wet deck located depth and no diving markers shall be placed every 20 feet or less. If the vertical distance between the coping or wet deck and the sun shelf floor adjacent to the wall is 12 inches or less, these markers shall indicate the water depth of the sun shelf. And that's a sun shelf there. That's what we're talking about. Pool covers. If a pool cover or solar blanket is installed, it shall be secured around the entire perimeter and designed to support a live load of an adult person. The pool area shall be inaccessible to unauthorized people during times of cover or blanket use, if that cover or blanket is not able to support the load of an adult person. The pool cover shall not be stored within the wet deck area within 4 feet of the pool edge or curb. So this is a bad example where they rolled it up and then they left it along the edge of the pool. They should roll that away from the pool edge so that it's not going to obstruct that entire side of the pool within 4 feet. Food facilities in the fenced-in pool area. Food or drink facilities could be grills, vending machines, bars, restaurants. Food or drink service facilities shall not be located within 12 feet of the water's edge. So I used to find grills, homeowners associations, that kind of thing would like to put grills in the area, and you measure it off and it's within the 12 feet, then you can write it up. So I know it's proposed rule change effective sometime in 2023 about swim-up bars. You guys know what swim-up bars are for. I'm sure you've already had plenty of that. But it's a public pool for consumption of food or beverage with a permanent bar or counter within the pool area, and it's served to people. They have to meet the following requirements according to the proposed rule. They're permitted only at transient public lodging establishments, theme parks, or entertainment complexes. Food and beverages have to be provided in spill-proof containers that are not made of glass or other material that could be broken or injure pool patrons. Provide smooth, easily cleanable poolside surface to place their food and beverage containers on. And the signage posted must to inform patrons about pool has a swim-up bar that provides food and beverages. Spillages should be reported to staff for rapid cleanup, and consumption of alcoholic beverages may cause drowsiness. So that's a picture of a swim-up bar there. What about ADA access in the pool wet deck area? So permanent or portable steps, ramps, handrails, lifts, or other devices that are going to be used to accommodate handicapped people to get into a pool may be provided. The local health agency does not require or enforce ADA access requirements in Florida public pools, but do require the following when you inspect: that the lifts are mounted into the pool deck and have a minimum 4-foot wide deck behind the lift mount, and shouldn't create any electrical or other safety hazard in the pool or pool area. Landscape irrigation. This is the water that could wet the wet deck of the pool itself, get into the collector tank, or get into an interactive water feature or splash pad. Should be from a potable water system. Reclaimed water may not be used in these areas, but if reclaimed water is used in the vicinity of the pool or inside of the pool fence or within 100 feet of the pool water edge, it must employ drip irrigation or soaker hoses. Signs shall be posted notifying pool patrons that reclaimed water is used and cannot be consumed. Okay, so we had issues with reclaimed water being able to get into and contaminate some of our facilities that were built prior to a code change back in the 2000s. This is a splash pad that would have possible landscape irrigation, so you want to check for that and make sure that it's potable water or it meets the reclaimed water requirements, which it probably wouldn't, so unless it's drip irrigation, but I would assume this would be potable water here. Other pool lighting requirements: artificial lighting shall be provided at all swimming pools that are used at night or which do not have adequate natural lighting, so that all parts of the pool, including the bottom, can be readily seen without glare. The lighting shall provide a minimum of 3-foot candles or 30 lux of illumination at the pool water surface and the pool wet deck surface. And the underwater lighting shall be a minimum of a 1/2 watt of incandescent equivalent or 10 lumens per square foot of pool water surface area. So we're worried about outdoor pool lighting for pools for night swimming. Indoor pool lighting requirements are a little bit different. So artificial lighting shall be provided at all swimming pools that are used at night or which do not have adequate lighting. And that for same rule for indoor pools: no glare, need to not have a glare. And again, this is the specific lighting requirements right here for indoor pools. Provide a minimum of 10-foot candles or 100 lux of illumination at the pool water surface and the pool wet deck surface. And underwater lighting shall be a minimum of 0.8 of a watt incandescent equivalent or 15 lumens per square foot of pool surface area. Underwater lights shall comply with Chapter 27 of the Florida Building Code. The location of underwater lights shall be such that the illumination is as uniform as possible, and the underwater lighting requirements can be waived when overhead lighting provides at least 15-foot candles or 150 lux of illumination at the pool water surface and the pool wet deck surface. Look for underwater lights that have completely come out of the wall. I had one I showed up to once. Some people are in the pool and basically they had the wire with the light just sitting on the rollout gutter. And then they start coming out of the pool wall. You can look down and you can see that. I would write that up early on before it becomes a big safety violation. This one's coming loose from the pool wall. Night swimming requirements, we kind of talked about. So pools shall not be open at night unless lighting is provided as approved by the local building department. Pools authorized for night swimming shall be noted on the operating permit that's issued by the local health agency. Night swimming shall be considered 1/2 hour before sunset and 1/2 hour after sunrise. And you want to have them hopefully use the lighting certification form that is available. And it makes it easier when you give something to somebody to be able to submit it. Rules signed for night swimming. Again, make sure that the hours, when you do an inspection, make sure that you see hours on there. If they're allowing to where you know it's going to be dark, look at your inspection report and make sure it says yes for night swimming. If you have an N, it means that either somebody didn't update the system right and you're going to have to go check the file, or they never got approved for night swimming. You can write up the violation based on the hours being wrong. They cannot have the hours for night swimming if they haven't been approved for night swimming. Gutter, grates, and skimmers. Pool water level should be maintained at a level that's suitable for continuous skimming without flooding during periods of non-use. This includes our surge gutters, our rollout gutters, and our skimmers. Again, there's a type A and type B type violation. Type A is if you feel there's an injury hazard or exposed broken grate. Missing skimmer cover on the deck would be type A. And then type E is 3 or more grates missing or broken if the skimmer weir door is broken or missing broken skimmer cover on the deck. So this is a broken gutter grate, it's missing a screw. Make sure you're looking for stuff like that. Check out, make sure you're looking at all this when you do your inspections. This is missing a weir door on the skimmer, so make sure that you're checking for those. Make sure skimmer baskets aren't full of crap, that they're not broken while they're sitting in there. They're useless if they're broken, have no bottoms, they're cracked, anything like that. They can't put trichlor tabs in their skimmer baskets either. Return inlets need to be adjustable, with wall type inlets being directionally adjustable and floor type inlets having a means of flow adjustment. Floor inlets need to be designed and installed so they don't protrude above the floor. And return inlets should be designed and installed so that there's no sharp edges or protrusions that are hazardous to pool bathers. So this one in the picture is kind of coming loose there from the pool wall. Vacuum breakers, you need to have an atmospheric break or approved backflow prevention device provided in each pool water supply line that is connected to a public water supply. Vacuum breakers shall be installed on all hose bibs in the fenced-in pool area, and a hose bib with a vacuum breaker shall be provided within 25 feet of each restroom as well. And it's that copper piece that we have screwed onto the hose bib. This is within the fenced-in area, so it has to have a vacuum breaker. We're not talking about pool equipment area right now. We're strictly in pool fenced-in area, so that's why we haven't talked. Yes, it's required over there as well. Even if you have like a poolside shower where you've got a hose bib right there, they need to have that vacuum breaker there, okay? Drinking water fountains. This isn't in code. This is going to be recommendations if they have a drinking water fountain. It needs to be kept clean and frequently disinfected. Have adequate pressure for the water to flow above the mouth guard of the fountain, and fountain maintenance is health and safety recommendation, but you can't write it up as a violation. It's not in code. Poolside bathrooms need to be provided and maintained in good working order with all the necessary supplies. Then it should be located within 200 feet of the pool water edge. And the floors of the sanitary facilities need to be constructed concrete or other non-absorbent material, be smooth and slip resistant finish, and slope to floor drains, which must be installed within the facility. And carpets, duckboards, and footbaths are prohibited. The intersection between the floor and wall shall be covered where either the floor or wall is not made of waterproof material such as tile or vinyl. So check your poolside bathrooms. That's actually me in the mirror taking a picture of myself. All right. Yes, it was during COVID. I think I had to go out and do a new facility construction after we kind of reopened things, and we're starting to do a few things here and there. But check, make sure everything's working, nothing's backing up. I had a toilet that was backing up at one of my inspections with poop and pee, and it was one of those old hotels where the bathrooms are connected to the pool deck, and it was backed up, and it was all backing up into the pool, like onto the deck and trickling into the pool. So, and the pool had no chlorine and a high pH. So it was a perfect storm. But make sure they have the waste basket, everything's working, hot and cold running water, you guys know. Make sure bathrooms are labeled. Diaper changing stations, 1 diaper changing table shall be provided at each restroom. They're not required at restrooms where all pools are restricted to adults only. Swim diapers are recommended for people and children and adults that are not toilet trained or incontinent. And persons that are ill with diarrhea should not be entering the pool, okay? Poolside bathroom access. So outside access to facilities shall be provided for bathers at outdoor pools. Where the restrooms are located within an adjacent building and the restroom doors do not open to the outside, the restroom doors shall be within 50 feet of the building's exterior door. If the restrooms are not visible from any portion of the pool deck, signs shall be posted showing directions to the facilities. They should be legible from the pool deck and shall be a minimum of 1 inch high. Animals and pools. If you're aware that there was an animal in the pool, should follow the CDC guidelines that's available at this website that will take you to CDC website or healthyswimming.org. And if you scroll down, it's got about finding a dead animal, birds in pools, and raccoons. Raccoons are very specific because of a roundworm. It doesn't even come down to disinfection when it comes to raccoons in the pool because of the roundworm specifically. It's more about filtration, okay? So it'll take you to this website and you can get more information there. So if you see any major public safety or health hazard, people should voluntarily post their pool closed and contact their pool operator, because they don't want the health inspector to come show up and post their sign, and now they've got an inspection report that has their pool closed by their health agency. So is there any questions at this point? And then I got 3 little quiz questions afterwards, but I want to I guess I'll do the quiz questions first, and then I'll open up to questions for everybody. So if you want to put in the chat window your answer, that would probably be the easiest. So question 1, true or false? You can voluntarily close your pool if you find that your BGB approved main drain cover is broken. True or false? Everybody's saying true so far. That is correct. That is a true statement. Question number 2. Wet deck area is defined as what? A, the fenced-in area of the pool. B, 12 feet from the pool water edge. Or C, 4 feet from the pool water edge. Also from ladders, handrails, and ADA lifts. Or D, none of the above. Everybody says C. Very good. It is 4 feet from the pool water edge, including ladders, handrails, and ADA lifts. Last question. True or false? By January 1st, 2022, all pools shall have added pool maximum depth with the blank to be filled in feet in 2-inch letters with the previously listed pool rules. Is that true or false? What does everybody think? So I got 1 false, but more trues. So let's go ahead and give the answer. That answer is true. January 1st of the current year we're in, so almost a year ago, you should already be enforcing this whole year since last January 1st, since we're almost to the end of the year of 2022, that new rule on the sign. It was in the rule prior to that and gave everybody like almost a year with that in the rule, saying it was going to become effective on January 1st, 2022. All right. So again, any questions for me? I don't know how Michael wants to open up questions. He said he was going to field any questions, I guess.
Yes, I can look in the chat box if there's any questions. Definitely put them in the box right now. Somebody wrote, I thought it was 4 inches.
We're talking about the wet deck area. So the wet deck area is that one question we were talking about here. Wet deck area is defined as it's 4 feet from the pool water edge, not 4 inches. It's 4 feet from the pool water edge. Somebody did say, are there any provisions available to facilities without diaper changing stations? So it depends on when the pool was built, if they're required to have diaper changing stations. So if it's an older pool, it's not going to be required. That came into the Florida Building Code at a certain point. So if it was built with it, then I definitely have to maintain it. So if you walk in and they've removed it and you know there was one in that bathroom before, then they would have to replace it, and you could write that up. All right, the pool, let's see, depth marker material for metal gutters. Can they use stickers for the inner wall? I don't believe stickers can be used at all because they're not permanent. So they peel off very easily and they fade off very easily. So it should be a permanent tile normally type deal now for depth markers and no diving markings. Stickers went away a while ago. Let's see, I'm trying to field the rest of the questions. Do you see anything else I missed?
The signage, so it's 4 inches for signage on maximum depth.
It is 4-inch lettering for the maximum depth, but the question up here was wet deck area. The wet deck area defined as, that's 4 feet from the pool water edge. Maximum, so
question
maximum,
3. What was question 3?
So the maximum depth is 2-inch lettering for the maximum depth of the pool. No diving on the pool rule sign has to be in 4-inch lettering. And then the rest of the rules have to be in 1-inch lettering minimum. Let's see, anything else down here? I don't see any other questions. Anybody else have any other questions for me? We still have about 3 minutes before you move on to your next speaker. I want to make sure everybody has the ability. If you want to look at the maximum depth of the maximum depth and the how tall it's supposed to be, it's in section 454 of the Florida Building Code. No diving has to be in 4-inch lettering. So no diving is 4-inch lettering. The maximum depth that is new that you should be enforcing since January 1st, 2022 would be 2-inch lettering minimum. Doesn't mean they can't make it bigger. So they certainly could make the maximum depth 4 inches if they wanted to, and you couldn't write it up. It's minimum in code. It says minimum sizing is 4-inch for no diving, 2-inch for the maximum depth with the blank. And then the rest of the rules are a minimum 1-inch lettering. Hopefully I cleared that up because I saw Jeff and Deborah had some rules. You're welcome, Deborah. So thank you very much, Michael, for having me on today. I hope everybody enjoyed the presentation.
All right, thank you, Lauren. I'm going to switch presenter roles to Gary Frank.
Thank you.
All right, Gary, you have the screen. All right, Gary, would you like to introduce yourself? And I can see your screen, it's working good. But you are muted.
There we go. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Alrighty, welcome everybody. Just a few introductory comments. My background, as you can see on the screen, I'm retired. I spent 33 years with the state health department. I was a supervisor with the Bureau of Radiation Control, and then went on to Florida State University to be the assistant radiation safety officer, and then to the University of Kentucky to be the radiation safety officer there. Came back to Florida, and for about the past 20 years have worked with the health department as well as with other agencies. As you can see on the screen, I'm the co-chair of the RDSTF Region 4. That's the Regional Domestic Security Task Force. And we have a Preventative Radiological Nuclear Detection Committee. It's made up of approximately 20 members. There's Homeland Security officers, the Bomb Squad, Fish and Wildlife Commission, Florida Highway Patrol, FBI, the National Guard, the Coast Guard, Vice President from the port. So you can see we've got a pretty robust committee. We do have a training team. We provide training to the different agencies, usually 2 or 3 times a year. We have various equipment, personal radiation detectors, other devices that are called REHS, and they identify the isotope. And we have 2 mobile units. We generally have a exercise every year or so. They're full-scale exercises. The last one I was involved with was just a few weeks ago, and we were near the Clearwater Airport in Crystal River, primarily working with the National Guard. And the scenario was a post-nuclear detonation. So as you can see, we keep fairly busy. So from there, I'll go ahead into the regular presentation. And for some reason, it's not advancing. There we go. So we'll start out with an atom. It's the smallest part of an element that retains that element. The atoms are made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Atoms make up elements, and elements make up matter. Protons have a positive charge, and also they determine the element's identity. Neutrons are neutral and determine the nuclear properties. Electrons have a negative charge and determine the chemical properties. There's a periodic table. There's 117 elements with 92 occurring naturally. And there's the periodic table of the elements. There's an example. Ra is radium. It has 88 protons and a total of 226 protons and neutrons. Nuclide notation, that's iodine 131 with 53 protons, 131 total protons and neutrons. That's commonly used in nuclear medicine. At the University of Kentucky's Markey Cancer Center, they routinely did thyroid ablations using I-131, and they would use approximately 100 millicuries, which is quite a large dose. The room would be lead lined, and after the person would leave, the room would have to be decontaminated because you do sweat the nuclide out as well as through other bodily functions. So isotopes, They have the same number of protons, differing number of neutrons. So I think most of us have heard of carbon-14, which is used for dating. And radioactivity. We'll go through some definitions now. It's a spontaneous nuclear change resulting in the formation of new elements, and that's accomplished by alpha and beta particle emissions. The alpha particle is 2 protons and 2 neutrons. It's much larger than a beta particle. Beta particle is just an electron that's ejected from the nucleus of an atom. Then we have X and gamma photons. They're packets of electromagnetic energy. The only difference is the gamma rays emitted from the nucleus, while X-rays originate in the electron shell. So some more definitions. Curious amount of radioactivity is equal to 1 gram of radium-226. It's relatively large quantities. Ionizing radiation is what we are mostly concerned with, and that's capable of displacing an electron, which results in the formation of ions. Non-ionizing radiation is longer wavelengths, lower energies. Examples are radio waves, microwaves, visible light. And there's a pictorial of the electromagnetic spectrum. On the left, you have the higher energy gamma and X-rays. Then you have visible light, infrared, microwaves. More definitions, half-life. So it's the amount of time required for a radioactive material to lose 50% of its activity, and that can vary immensely. Some isotopes have half-lives of thousands of years, like carbon-14. Others, like technetium-99m, that's commonly used in nuclear medicine, has a half-life of 6 hours. So in approximately 2.5 days or 10 half-lives, it's essentially non-radioactive, or the person who received it is. There you can see we have different naturally occurring radioactivities. Uranium, radon's the daughter of radium. Most everybody has heard of the problems with the radon in the air and buildings. Potassium-40 is abundant, and it's found in, one of the things it's found in is bananas. Radiation can be in the form of particles or electromagnetic waves. And I'm not sure why, but the presentation's not advancing.
Try to close out PowerPoint and reopen it. It might just be a glitch in PowerPoint.
Okay. Michael, I'm not sure what.
Go to slideshow on the top.
On the right-hand side of my screen, there's all the information is concerned. I'm going to close this. If I don't want to leave. There we go. All right, so there's different penetration differences with the alpha, beta, and gamma. Alpha, as you can see, is stopped by a piece of paper or the dead layer of your skin, while beta primarily is stopped by wood or plastic. Gamma and X-rays, you generally need concrete or lead to stop them. Alpha radiation characteristics. The alpha particle travels a very short distance in air, about 1 inch, so it's not able to penetrate the skin. And most survey meters won't detect the alpha particles. However, when you have an alpha decay, there's always an associated X-ray that can be detected. Beta radiation characteristics. Beta can travel up to about 12 feet in air. However, that does depend on the energy. A much lower energy tritium will only travel a few inches. So there is quite a bit of difference. It can penetrate the germinal level, so it can be harmful also if it's internally deposited, either through inhalation or ingestion. And beta particles, except for the tritium that I mentioned, can be detected with most survey meters. The tritium emits a very weak electron, about 19 keV. So again, it doesn't penetrate the surface of the detector. Gamma and X-ray radiation, of course, they're very penetrating, travel a long distance, and they can be an external and internal hazard. As we said, shielding is generally with lead or concrete. There's a naturally occurring U-238 decay scheme, starting with U-238. As you can see in about the middle of your screen, the decay product is the radon-222. And down at the lower left, you'll see the stable element in green, which is lead. So when we're talking about how much radioactive material is there, we don't talk about weight or volume or mass. We talk about it's measured in activity and how many curies. So you can see 1 gram of the different isotopes differs quite a bit in the amount. And that is primarily due to the half-life of that particular isotope. For instance, cesium-137 has a 30-year half-life. Dose rate units. So you see we have micro-R per hour, milli, and rads or Rankins per hour. So it's very important when an inspector calls back in, say to their mobile base, what their readings are, because if they get them wrong, you're talking about a factor of 1,000 difference. We generally don't worry about micro R per hour readings. So a key concept is what your exposure was versus what the dose rate is. So think of the dose rate as a speedometer where your dose is the odometer. So for instance, a test question I usually give is, if you're in a dose rate of 60 mR per hour for 1 hour, what is your dose? Of course, the answer is 60 mR. So different types of radiation exposure. There's external radiation. That's when somebody's exposed to an external source. The body may absorb the radiation, but the person does not become radioactive. A good example is when you get a X-ray at the hospital or doctor's office. Once that X-ray is turned off, there's no radiation in the room, and there's no radiation in your body either. However, you have received a radioactive dose. Contamination, you can transfer it from one person to the next, or it can be internal. Think of it more or less like as if you walked through a dirty field and you're picking up the dirt on your shoes, etc. I know one time one of our hazmat commanders called me. They had just responded to an incident at a medical laboratory, and he wanted to know, he knew that they had contamination on their boots, and he wondered if he needed to remove it or store the boots for a while. And once I found out what the isotope was, I just told him to wait about a minute, because the half-life of the particular isotope was only a matter of seconds. Incorporation is when you take in the radioactive material in your body, again by inhalation or absorption, ingestion. There is specific medications that can be administered to expedite the excretion of certain radionuclides. For instance, a chemical called Prussian blue is used to expedite cesium-137 from the body. And that's actually in the pushback from Homeland Security. So we'll talk about dosimetry. Rankins, RADs, and REMs. RAD is the radiation absorbed dose, while REM is the RAD equivalent to man. Personnel monitors, folks that are considered radiation workers generally wear dosimeters. They can be film, which is more of a older type technology. TLDs, or thermoluminescent dosimeters, are common types used today. They have a chip in them, and as they're exposed to ionizing radiation, the electron levels are raised. These are then have to be sent back to a laboratory to be read. They can detect beta and gamma radiation, but not alpha. So we have maximum allowable doses. Most were derived from case studies from Japan, from the nuclear explosions at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. 5 rems is what's allowed per year for radiation workers. Most everybody receives background radiation from all different types of naturally occurring isotopes that are around us. So again, the whole body, 5 rems for a radiation worker. Just a member of the public is only allowed 0.1 rems. The skin is not as sensitive, so you're allowed 50 rems, and the lens of the eye, 15 rems, again as a radiation worker. Average doses from medical procedures. You can see chest x-rays, your exposure is very low. Spine, 500 millirads. A heart catheterization 25 rads, quite a dose. Radiation therapy, you receive generally thousands of rads. So a common question I get is, how can we survive receiving thousands of rads? And remember, generally the beam is well collimated, so we're only speaking of exposing generally a centimeter or just a few centimeters. There's typical background radiation per year. So there's your radon exposure, and medical, consumer products, etc. Remember, the radon exposure is not whole body though, it's only exposing the lungs and bronchioles. Radiation sources. So we have naturally occurring, norm, soil and building materials. Just a side note, generally when I was working and wore a personal dosimeter, driving around Pinellas County, it would generally go off several times a year from just the naturally occurring radioactive material and roadbed materials. There's our bananas with the potassium 40. They only contain picocuries of potassium 40 though, so go ahead and keep eating your bananas. Nuclear medicine, injections of generally roughly 10 millicuries. Of course, nuclear power. Industrial devices, that's a roadbed. That device you see has cesium-137 in it, and it detects the thickness and moisture content in roadbeds as they're preparing them. And smoke detectors. Many today do not have a radioactive source in it. They use different technology, but older ones generally had 1 microcurie of americium-241, a alpha emitter. Side note, with those, our bomb squads generally have personal radiation detectors on them. We had an incident in Tampa, probably about 5 years ago, when the bomb team went into an apartment complex looking for a couple of individuals, and their detectors went off. Actually, one of the bomb squad members was Sergeant Jarrett, who is the co-chair of our committee, and the 2 occupants were actually accumulating radiation devices, primarily the smoke detectors, to build a dirty bomb. So we have the concept of a LARA, as low as reasonably achievable. So time, distance, and shielding are on your side. We also have the inverse square law, which as you get further away from the radioactive source, the dose rate not only drops off linearly, but actually exponentially. So as you double the distance, you decrease the radiation rate by a factor of 4. So we'll talk a little bit about instrumentation. Many types of handheld laboratory instruments. Most everybody's heard of the Geiger-Müller tube. There's also ion chambers, gas flow proportionals. Scintillation detectors are generally used for very small quantities of detecting radioactive material, primarily in laboratory settings, medical settings. There's a countertop Geiger-Müller tube. The long black tube that you see is the Geiger-Müller tube. It has a thin end window. The ionizing radiation interacts with the gas-filled tube. It's converted into an electrical pulse that then you can read on the meter. There's an old civil defense ion chamber. Interestingly, if you go into our Emergency Management Center / Sheriff's Department, you'll see a display case with a couple of these in it. So, bioeffects of radiation. The injuries begin at the molecular level. Water molecules form free radicals, and as a result, you have hydrogen peroxide formed, H2O2. You probably have that in your medicine cabinet. It's good to use topically for some of the injuries you might receive, but not as an internal conversion of your water. Fortunately, direct hits on proteins and other molecules are not that common, but they do result in damage and or death to the DNA. So cells were found out to be different in their sensitivity by a couple of French scientists, Burgundy and Tribandot. And in the characteristics are a high mitotic rate and also less specialized cells. Some of them, from the most to the least sensitive, you have the embryonic. That's why we want to protect the fetus if the female, of course, is pregnant. Hematopoietic, your blood forming. And as you go on down, you can see your muscles and nervous systems are the least sensitive. There we have the LD 50/30. That's the lethal dose to 50% of the population in 30 days. As you can see, dogs, humans, and rats are all pretty similar. That's primarily due to the way we're all mammals. Well, you can see goldfish can withstand quite a bit more radiation. And then I usually ask the class, what is a Drosophila? Of course, they're used in genetic studies. That's our fruit flies. Acute radiation sickness, the ARS, is molecular death, central nervous system, the GI, and the hematopoietic. You generally can survive the hematopoietic, but once you get to the GI and above, death is almost certain. But most of the folks and some of the nuclear accidents range in the GI area. So it takes quite a big dose, about 100 rem, before you'll observe symptoms, primarily nausea and vomiting. Exposures between 50 and 100 rem usually can only be detected by blood analysis. You'll see a decrease in the lymphocytes, the white blood cells. So here's some of the observable somatic effects. Again, the general public's only allowed 10% of radiation workers of the 5 rem per year. So at 50 rems, you can see you have reduced sterility, cataract formation at around 200 rem. Again, between 400 and 500 is around your lethal dose. 500, hair loss, temporary. 2,500, hair loss, permanent. So delayed effects of radiation, of course, cancer induction. Generally, though, there's about a 5 to 30-year latent period. So even if you are exposed to a fairly high dose of radiation, it's going to be a while before you receive the effects of a tumor. Unfortunately, also, cancer induction risks are fairly low compared to some other things, say, compared with different chemicals. So radiation protection, of course, very important for our responders. Remembering our ALARA concepts, reducing the time. So again, even if you're going in a radiation field of 1,000 MR per hour, that's 1 rad per hour, which is a fairly high radiation field. If you're only there for a life-saving activity of, say, 1 minute to get somebody out of that area, you get a very small dose of 16 millirems, which again, remember, is equivalent to about a chest x-ray. Shielding again. So depending on what you're shielding, whether it's gamma and x-rays, beta emitters, in the university work, most of the work is done with beta emitters. So they work behind clear plastic shields. And distance. So if you can step away from the radiation source, the further away you can be and still accomplish your task, the better. We'll cover some aspects of transporting radioactive materials. Medical isotopes are on our highways and streets every day being transported to medical facilities. Soil moisture density gauges, they're found on our highways and roads that are being built every day. Low-level waste shipments to our nuclear power plants, those aren't very often. And of course, fuel rods and then nuclear weapons, again, very infrequent. Fortunately, there's never been an injury or death due to a Type B shipment. Type B shipments are your waste shipments primarily from nuclear reactors. There's an example of a medical isotope container in the foreground, and you see further in the background a cylindrical lead-lined tube where you would find the preloaded dose in a syringe for a patient study. Packaging, there's 4 types: accepted, industrial, and then type A and B. There's your smoke detectors that I said may contain the 1 microcurie. So they don't even have a label saying that there's radiation contained. There's industrial packaging. These are your type A packages. Those are the most common, generally medical isotopes inside. The 1 red case that you see would be for generally an industrial source. They all are tested and have to pass certain criteria. There's your type B packaging, primarily for, again, the nuclear reactors. However, on your bottom left, that's a camera used for industrial radiography. They generally have iridium-192 in it. These are the different warning labels. MP, there's the radioactive 1. And the difference is obtained by getting your TI or transport index. And you can see the surface reading is only allowed to be 0.5 MR per hour, or at 1 meter from the background radiation. Yellow 2, you're allowed more, 50 MR per hour. Again, you see they should fill in the contents and the activity on the label. Your TI, transport index, is measured at 1 meter from the package surface. And the highest is radioactive 3 labels. You're allowed 200 MR per hour at the surface. 200 MR per hour at the vehicle surface. These other labels, the radioactive 1s and 2s, the truck or transport vehicle does not have to be labeled. But if you're carrying yellow 3s, you do have to label on the exterior of your vehicle. So again, a FedEx truck, a UPS truck may be carrying radioactive material, but you won't know it because it won't be carrying yellow 3s. If they are carrying radioactive materials, they need to have shipping papers. And they're a valuable source of information. They can have contact information and emergency response information. You can see all the different things that will be listed: the identity, chemical form, activity, category of the label, your TI, and fissile controls if applicable. That's generally not the case. When I was at the universities, we generally would need to do a shipment of about once per year, generally very low level radioactive material, mainly contaminated items such as gloves, possibly different liquids. At that time, 20 plus years ago, it would roughly cost $1,000 per 55-gallon drum to ship the material. There's an example of a shipping paper. Responding to an incident, you generally want to try to stay upwind. You may need to use binoculars depending on the size and scope of the accident. Priorities for rescue: life-saving, first aid first. That's one of the things I emphasize on my training to our hazmat teams, is that generally you're not going to receive a sizable or much of a dose. So you need to take care of the medical problems first. With all your hazmat teams establish control zones. They're generally set at 2 MR per hour. That's what is allowed to the general public. So you can see where the center where the hot zone is, and the spill is the hot zone. Decontamination criteria. Generally going to want to use a thin end window Geiger-Müller tube like we saw earlier. And then there's different guidelines for contamination levels. Generally, for contamination levels up to about 1,000 counts per minute, people can go home, take a shower, depending on the isotope, dispose of their clothing, or if it's a short-lived half-life, you can just set it aside for days or weeks. However, if their level is up around 100,000 counts per minute, they are likely to have internal contamination and generally will have to be followed up with medical care. Again, generally, if you remove the person's clothing, personal belongings, you can remove about 75% of the contamination. May want to collect samples. You generally want to start contamination with wounds first, and then work your way to the lower contamination levels. You don't want to use things like wire brushes, etc., because you would open up the minor blood vessels and possibly create a worse situation. You may want to have to cut somebody's hair off or use electric clippers. If you get down to twice background or there's no significant reduction, you generally want to stop decontamination. Reminds me of a interesting scenario. A fire captain from Pinellas County contacted me, and we met with two ladies that were going over to Japan after their incident several years back. And the ladies, we issued them personnel dosimeters, Geiger counters, and they were going over to decontaminate pets, dogs, cats. It's quite interesting. They actually called us from Japan with a few questions and came back with some interesting stories. In general, animals with long hair, they had to be shaved. So accidents, fortunately, radiation is well controlled and there's very few accidents. Some notable accidents are 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl and Guyana, Brazil. 3 Mile Island, the operators did about everything they could wrong, and still most people only received a very slight amount of radiation. Chernobyl was quite a bit different, and there some of the workers did receive a lethal dose or quite a few rads. We will cover the Brazil accident as it was very interesting, and in general, most people haven't seen it. There's somebody that carried a radioactive source, not realizing that it was radiation. And again, you can see how the skin was excised. We're going to skip a few things and go into a terrorist attack. So there's national planning scenarios. The federal agencies, Homeland Security, they've developed 15 different hazard planning scenarios depending on the severity and type of accident. Here's one scenario with a nuclear detonation of a 10 kiloton improvised nuclear device. This is similar to the size of Nagasaki, Hiroshima. So you can see the casualties could be upwards of hundreds of thousands. Infrastructure damage would be limited to about 1 mile. Contamination, a huge problem, about 3,000 square miles. Economic impact, huge. Recovery time, years. The main isotope after IND, an improvised nuclear device, is cesium-137. It has a 30-year half-life. So it's going to be around for a couple hundred years. So an RDD, or radiological disposal device, is much more common, likable, practical. You can see the deaths, injuries are much less. You would evacuate near the site, but it would amount to be just a matter of city blocks. Still a large economic impact, and a recovery time of months to years, depending on the isotope. So there's two types of the RDDs: a dirty bomb, which most of us have heard of, and then there's aerial spray possibilities. The aerial spray would be something where, say, a small airplane was used to spray, when people would think that they're spraying fertilizer or insecticides, and actually they're spreading radioactive material. There's our probability much higher for a RDD than a nuclear device. You simply develop a explosive device and add radioactive material to it. The material could be stolen from a hospital or possibly an industrial lab. There's some different configurations. Obviously, if we already had fireworks going off, nobody would probably be thinking much about a nuclear problem as well. In your lower left, you see the planes spraying what is thought to be insecticides or fertilizer. Is the dirty bomb a nuclear weapon? No. We don't have any fissile material such as plutonium or uranium. Dirty bombs would usually use nuclear waste or sources, as I mentioned, maybe from a hospital nuclear medicine lab. Fortunately, the nuclear weapons need weapons grade material. Again, nuclear weapons, much more devastating. Radiation exposure device. Health effects are low, usually psychological effects. So we commonly do this in some of our radiation exercise and hide a radioactive source in a trash can. Hopefully that our teams will be able to detect and find. There's a nuclear detonation with the mushroom cloud. Upper left, that's the size that would be used for the Nagasaki, Hiroshima, whereas an improvised nuclear device, that's generally will fit inside a suitcase. You only need about 20 pounds of SNM, special nuclear material, to build a improvised nuclear device. So who has nuclear weapons? You can see the different countries there listed. By the way, we happen to know Iran is still enriching their uranium, and it's way beyond what you need for nuclear power. Everybody's got one. And according to a former CIA director, nuclear detonation in a US city is Al Qaeda's ultimate goal. Again, that's one thing we, in the health physics area that I'm involved in, worry much about our southern border. Folks could be bringing in special nuclear material and probably wouldn't be detected. You can bring it in increments of 1 pound, and the person carrying it probably would think they're getting paid to carry drugs instead of special nuclear material. So that concludes the presentation. I'll take some questions if there are. There's a little cartoon at the end, and you can see just a little problem with radon gas, and I think the little girl has 3 eyes. Thanks, Michael. You can
All right,
the
thank you
screen.
very much, Gary. I appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions? We can look in the chat box right now. Tim says radon causes lung cancer. Thank you, Tim, for our PSA message. All right. Can you mention intentional poisoning and how the victim is treated? How is a victim of intentional radiation poisoning treated?
Yeah, it would depend on the isotope. So there's not a lot of quick cures for something like that. One of the things that will work with some of the isotopes is just to force fluids, and the radioactive material will be just eliminated through excretion of the body.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions? Tim posted some free radon test kits are available through the links in the chat box. If anybody wants to get their home tested for radon, you can download that link there and Tim will send you a test kit. All right. Thank you very much, Gary. I'm going to take the presentation back from you and transfer it over to Andrea Abels. All right, Andrea, you have the screen. And if you just unmute, yep, there you go.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And good morning to the Panhandle folks. So it's not quite 12:30 yet. I don't think my presentation will take an hour and a half. When I gave it to department staff in November, it took that long because we had a lot of questions. So feel free to ask plenty of questions. But right now, I'm going to give us a break until 12:30. So if you guys want to get up and stretch or get a snack or whatever, and then I'll start at 12:30.
All right, thank you. I'll see everybody back at 12:30.
Okay, it is 12:30. So let me explain why everyone is going to be staring at this dead rat while I'm giving my presentation. So for all of you department folks, you know that everything has to be approved before it can be given out or shared with the public. So since not everyone on this recorded training is a Florida Department of Health employee, and my presentation has not made it all the way through communications to share with the public, I cannot share my PowerPoint presentation that I gave in November to everybody that worked for the department. So what I'm going to do is just talk. I am sharing my screen because there is a part during the presentation where I say, you know, I want everybody to look at pictures and see if you see any violations, and then we can talk about it. So I'm going to try to make this as seamless as possible. I don't typically work and go to meeting. I work out of Teams. So if you have any questions, if I'm messing anything up as I'm going, feel free to stop me at any point. Let's see, what else can I tell you? The presentation that I gave in November, if you are a department employee, you've already received contact hours for that. This is going to be the same presentation, and you cannot get contact hours for the same presentation in the recertification year. So if you already attended the one in November, this one's the same, so I don't want to waste anybody's time. Do you guys have any questions for me before I get started? And then somebody just tell me that you can hear me and I didn't just say all that to myself.
You're good.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Fred. Thanks, Mary. Okay, so this was a presentation that I created for inspectors. The migrant housing program, it's kind of a convoluted program. So it has a lot of moving parts. We have 64E14 that is the health department's regulations. We have 1910-142, which are the federal standards that we use. I'm going to go through that a little bit. I am going to talk about pre-licensing inspections and the importance of that. I'll talk a little bit, I guess, about the data entry into EHD for the department folks that we have on the call. We have an interagency agreement with the Department of Economic Opportunity. I will talk a little bit about that. And then I polled the department folks for any questions that they wanted me to answer while I was giving the training in November. And so I have questions and answers for that. I will also preemptively tell everyone that I am working from home today. So I am hopeful that my dog doesn't bark and my kids aren't loud. And so if any of that is going on, I will just apologize ahead of time. So as I'm talking, I'm probably going to jump around a little bit. This program is kind of all over the place. And so I will try to bring everything back together at the end so that it makes sense. If you have questions, I am 100% okay if you interrupt me and ask the question. I'm not monitoring the chat. So Freya, I'm assuming you'll do that and you can jump in with any questions as I'm talking. And with that, I will get going. So we use 1910-142 for all of our migrant camps that are in the state of Florida. 1910-142 are the federal standards. So we can only use those during the inspection. We would use 64E14 Florida Administrative Code for everything else. We use it for ratios, we use it for permitting, we use it for absolutely everything. But if you have a migrant labor camp, you can only use 1910-142 for the inspection. Unfortunately, that is a state statute. It is in our rules, so we have to use it. I submitted a legislative bill proposal that actually made it out all the way out of the department. I was really excited, and it has already been killed before session even started. So one of the things that gets confusing is the definition of what exactly a migrant labor camp is compared to residential migrant housing. So when you have a migrant labor camp, that is an incident of your employment. So it's very important to distinguish the difference. So if you are offering housing as part of your job description and it's included, you would be a migrant labor camp. So anything that any worker that comes to America on an H2A visa and you're getting emails from me with the interagency agreement and the paperwork is going back to the Department of Economic Opportunity, all of that paperwork is because the housing is required as part of that job. So anything that we have permitted as a migrant labor camp, the housing is required. And an incident of employment is something that is contingent upon or related to being employed. So is there any questions on that? Because there's a lot of mistakes with that. We have a lot of permitted residential migrant housing across the state, and the majority of it should probably be a migrant labor camp. So one of the things to also point out is there is no minimum number of workers for migrant camps, but there is a minimum number of workers for residential housing. So if you have residential housing, you have to have 5 or more, but for migrant labor camps, it could just be 1 worker and we would have to go out and permit it as a camp. So the difference for residential migrant housing, it can be any combination of a building, a structure, single family residence, barracks, dormitory, and it is on adjacent land or it's under the same ownership as the farm that is set aside for the workers, but it's not required as an incident of employment. So if you have a parcel of property that's next to the farm that the farm owns, and he's just going to rent the housing out to his worker, but it's not included and it's not contingent on the employee's job, then that would be residential migrant housing. There's also a lot of confusion because in residential migrant housing, the language that's adjacent thereto, combination of, a lot of people get confused and they will have multiple addresses. You know, say it's one street and there's 911 addresses, it's 5 different houses. Just because all of the housing is adjacent to each other, that the property is adjacent to each other, that's not taken into consideration when we permit. So each individual house, each individual parcel would be its own camp. You can't take 5 different addresses and put them all on one permit and say, here's our migrant labor camp permit. Each individual address is required to be its own migrant labor camp. We also have HUD housing. So if you have HUD housing, those are separate standards. You would do that under Chapter 10. It's Chapter 10 in the HUD housing manual. But there's an exception when you're looking at the statutory definition of residential migrant housing. And if you have, say you have a HUD housing development and the majority in all of the people that are living in this HUD housing community, if they are all getting their income from agriculture, then it would be residential migrant housing. Any questions on that? Okay. I have to say, this is kind of a new one for me, like not being able to share my slides and just trying to make sure I'm covering everything. So in the migrant housing program, there is no grandfathering. There is nothing where, you know, you could have done this last year, so you can do it this year. You have to get an application every single year in the migrant program. It has to be a new application. They have to get a pre-licensing inspection, and the pre-licensing inspection has to be completed before a permit can be issued. And this is every single year. So every single year you will get a new application. Every single year before you issue the permit, you have to go out and do a pre-licensing inspection. And every single year, all of the violations have to be corrected before you can issue a permit. So you may go out there several times, because even if it is an incredibly innocuous violation, you don't think it's that important, it doesn't have a lot of public health significance to it, it's, you know, very minor, it doesn't matter. There can be absolutely no violations on the pre-licensing inspection before the permit is issued. So all of the permits expire September 30th. That is also in statute. It is not, migrant housing is not one of our programs that every permit has to be redone by October 1st and follow our traditional year. You may have growers that don't come in and apply because their date of need for their workers isn't going to be until December or January. So whenever they come in, you get the application, you do your pre-licensing inspection, and then the date of issue for the permit is going to be the day that they pass the pre-licensing inspection. It's not, you don't want it to default back to October 1st, because then it appears that it's been permitted the whole time when it hasn't. But regardless of when you issue the permit will expire September 30th because that's in the statute. We also now have to put sleeping units on all of our pre-licensing inspections. That is a part of the interagency agreement that we have with the Department of Economic Opportunity. It is actually a requirement of the Department of Labor. So the sleeping unit is not the capacity. The sleeping units is actually the number of rooms inside the camp that physically have people sleeping in them. So if you have a single family house, and let's say it's a 3-bedroom house, they have 2 workers per bedroom, and then the capacity would be 6. But if and the sleeping units would be 3. If they decide that they want to add 2 workers in the living room, then at that point your sleeping units become 4 and your capacity becomes 8. You know, a lot of farm worker housing that is out where there's water and septic, your limiting factor is going to be the septic system, because traditionally the septic systems are going to be sized by square footage and by the number of bedrooms, and it's 2 people per bedroom. So if you run into a situation like that, you just want to make sure that the septic system has the capacity to handle any additional workers that you are going to put in the house. So when you're completing a pre-licensing inspection, there's actually a purpose on the inspection form that says pre-licensing. So you need to make sure you're marking that and that you're not marking routine. So you would go out, you would do the pre-licensing. The great thing about EHD, and actually our new dashboard that we're having created right now, I just spoke with a developer yesterday to make sure that all of this is going to be in there. When you do your pre-licensing inspection and when it passes satisfactory, no violations, your pre-licensing inspection will count as a routine inspection. So it's not like you're going to lose inspections on your quota. It will count towards that once you're ready to issue your permit. Also on the inspection form, and I could be getting ahead of myself because I'm not looking at my notes. On the results section, we have closed for season. When you're filling out your inspection form and say you go out and you're doing a routine inspection and you've noticed that the workers have gone and the season's over, you would mark routine for your purpose, and then you would mark closed for season, and then it will update in the EHD your growing season dates, which will then update your inspection frequency. So make sure throughout the year that when you're completing an inspection, you're using pre-licensing, and then as your results, make sure you're using the closed for season, because that will update what your growing seasons are, and it will update what your inspection frequency is supposed to be for the migrant program. On the applications for migrant housing, we have, it's just one small little line. So when I redo the application, I'm going to update it, but there's one line on there where you would add what the growing season dates are. So you need to make sure when the applications are being completed by the farm labor contractors, if they have more than one growing season date, they need to add that onto the application. It doesn't actually have to be right in those little lines. They can put it anywhere. It doesn't matter. Just make sure that every single growing season is listed on our application, because it makes a difference, because in migrant housing, we inspect the facility twice a quarter while it's occupied. And we want to ensure that we're not going out there more than we need to, because we are out there 8 times a year possibly. And that is a lot of times to go out to a migrant camp. And you don't want to go out there when there's nobody there. It's just a waste of your time. Let me see if I can show you this. So in EHD, see if it'll come up. There you go, so you guys can see it better. So this is the details page when you are in EHD. And if you can see, it has your season open, season closed, you have your periods of operation. We have set up the EHD so that your most current season will always be at the top, very first one for your period of operation. So if you just wanted to take a quick glance at it, it's going to be the one that's right on top. What you want to make sure that you're doing is that every time you have to enter a growing season date, you're clicking on this little blue plus right here. And then that will give you a blank period of operation so that you can add your season open and add your season close. You can add as many growing seasons as you want through one permit year, but you don't ever want to X these out or delete your periods of operation, because what that does is in our database, say you're going to get a program evaluation and we show up and it doesn't look like your inspection frequency was and your inspections completed were done correctly, because the EHD does not retain these dates unless you hit the blue plus button. So if you delete all of your previous growing season dates and we go to run a quota report from the year before or 2 years before, it's going to give you the inspection frequency of whatever is currently in the EHD, and it's not going to calculate or take into effect the ones that were in there before. So please make sure that you are doing this. It's incredibly important. The last program evaluation cycle that we did, we ran, counties were running into issues because they were like, well, it wasn't open then, but they had deleted all of the previous growing seasons and they were just putting in 1 year at a time, then deleting them. So it's very important to keep them there. The list is going to get really long, and that's why I had the EHD folks put the current growing season dates all the way at the top. And I'm sorry for all of you guys that don't work for the department that are on this call, because it's definitely more geared towards people that are out in the field doing the work. And let me see. So I wanted to show this one. And then this. And when I gave the presentation, I gave a shout out to Jason and Highlands, because normally when I do a presentation, I'm not going to keep the entity address from the county in. But since this one was done correctly, I figured I would leave it in there. And this is Highlands County, and I gave them props because they have 277 migrant labor camps. So they are well versed in migrant housing. But what you're looking at here is you have the original application date, and that's going to be the date that the camp started for the first time ever. You're going to have your current application date because they're required to submit a new one every year. So this should be updated every single year. And since the application date was in July and they went out and did their pre-licensing before the permit year even ended, their permit issue date could be October 1st because they had everything done and ready to go before the permit year even started. So just make sure that you're out there and you're updating all of your information, because we are in and looking at stuff, and especially in the migrant program now and our interagency agreement, DEO is constantly asking me questions. And if I can answer the questions without having to bother you guys, because I know you're all really busy, I am happy to do so. And then that way I don't have to interrupt whatever you guys. So now I'm going to move on to the interagency agreement. So before I move on, does anybody have any questions? Okay. So, so we entered into an agreement with the Department of Economic Opportunity in December of 2018. So one of the reasons that I always talk about this interagency agreement is I want everybody to understand the big picture. So the agriculture industry in Florida is a $1 billion industry. And in order to get the workers to come to America, to be able to come to Florida and work, it is a very tedious, long process with the federal government. And so our farm labor contractors or employers, you can use it interchangeably, they start the application process with DEO, and they have to, you know, provide all of the housing because it's an incident of employment. They have to show how they're going to feed their workers. They have to show how they're going to provide transportation. By the time DEO has a completed application packet that's going to go to Chicago to the Department of Labor, it is usually anywhere from 60 to 80 pages long. And they have to do this every single time they're making a request for H2A workers. So the health department's role as far as our housing inspection, even though it is incredibly important that they have safe and sanitary housing to live in while they are working in Florida, it is such a small part of the application process. So I just like to reiterate to everyone that, you know, when you're out there and you're doing your inspections and you're getting stuff done, especially if you get a request from me through the interagency agreement email, we have a 7-window turnaround. Just try to be as quick and as diligent as you can, because if we don't meet the time frames, the workers don't get certified, and then they're not allowed to come to Florida to work. So when our farmers have these very small windows, you know, we'll use the Florida Strawberry Growers Association. They plastic and prep their fields in August. They are planting in October and November, and then they harvest in January and February for the strawberries. So if we are holding up their housing, or we're not diligent with getting the information back to DEO, and they have to wait a couple of weeks for their workers to show up, that's going to mess up the entire growing season for them. And they are very set specific growing season dates for our farmers. So it's just really important to kind of see the big picture. The completed application has to be in Chicago 30 days before the date of arrival for workers in Florida. So they have to have everything completed, everything certified by the Department of Economic Opportunity 30 days before the workers are even going to show up. And then once the Department of Labor in Chicago approves everything, then they can move forward with the process, and then the workers come down to Florida to plant and harvest our fruits and vegetables. The busiest times of year for the interagency agreement all just depends on where you are in the state. So like Hillsborough, Polk, a little bit of Hardy, their busiest times are typically going to be June and July. And so they're coming in, they're applying, they're trying to get their housing approved because they are needing workers in August. Now you have, you know, Collier with Immokalee and the tomatoes, and you have the oranges and Highlands, and they're going to be a little bit later in the year. But it's just so the busiest times for us and the most requests that you're going to get from me is going to be June and July if you're more central Florida, and then it's going to typically be September, October, November if you're Highlands, Henry Glades, around that area. This year I had 336 inspection requests just in October. So I understand I'm placing a burden on you guys because I'm dumping a bunch on you at once, and you have 7 days to get everything back to me, and everybody in the world is short-staffed right now. Just try to be as diligent, even if all you do is give me an update. I don't expect you to have everything done if you're running into issues or if they have to update their septic or whatever, but just give me an update so that I can give DEO an update. Some of the workarounds that we have created in our hotels, we don't expect our growers to bring their beds in and set up the hotel rooms and have every single room set up, because the workers aren't going to be there for another month or two. So we go in, we inspect the hotel, we leave it up to our inspectors to know the hotel, to know whether or not it's going to be good. You go into all the rooms that you can get into, and then you would go ahead and issue the permit. You need to be looking to make sure that there's a contract in place with the hotel to show all the rooms that they're going to get and that the workers match the contract. You're going to make sure they have a catering contract so that all of their workers will be fed 3 meals a day. If they have that, if you're able to get into rooms and you can inspect them and the majority of the ones that you're looking at are all good, all you would do is go ahead and approve it, and then write in the comments sections, you weren't able to get into all the rooms, you're going to go ahead and issue the permit, but that we're going to come back out before the workers show up, and we're going to verify the correct number of beds, we're going to verify the numbers of room are all set up and ready to go, and that the capacity that we have told DEO is still the capacity that's going to be in the hotel. Let's see what else. So I have an email account that is set up specifically for the interagency agreement. It is DCEH migrantmou@floridahealth.gov. I get 100 to 200 emails a day. It just depends on the day of the week. So if you send it to my personal email account, I may not see it that day. So you need to just please make sure that every correspondence that you send that has anything to do with the interagency agreement, DEO or migrant housing is going into that DCEH migrant MOU at floridahealth.gov. I'm reading my notes to make sure I'm telling you everything. So one of the things that we were also running into is we had health departments that, because the fiscal year started July 1st, they were holding the applications from the growers that were coming in June, and they weren't processing any of the applications until July. They wouldn't go out and do any inspections until July. So please don't do that. This is really important that we get the workers and the housing, everything is approved, and we get it back to DEO. And you're causing a lot of issues for the farmers and for our fruits and vegetables that won't come out correctly because the workers have showed up late. So if you're getting applications in June, let your business managers know that you're going to process them when you get them, and you cannot hold their money and you cannot hold their application until we're in a new fiscal year. We also, because of the agreement with the Department of Economic Opportunity, we now have additional housing. So the health department, we have statutory authority to permit and inspect housing for all hand labor workers in Florida. So anything that's considered hand labor is the picking, the planting, the prepping the fields, anything that you would think of that is traditional agriculture, with the workers that are picking strawberries or picking oranges, anything like that, we already have the authority under our statutes. We now have authority to do non-hand labor with the interagency agreement with DEO. So the non-hand labor is going to be the tractor drivers, the truck drivers, the packing house workers. Who knew we had the amount of apiaries that we do in Florida? But it is crazy how many beekeeping operations we have in Florida. Marion County, actually, I think they went from maybe one camp, could have even been 0, and they have over 35 now because of all of the horse breeding and the horse operations that they have in Ocala. So horses, I just got one for a llama farm in Hillsborough County. So alligators, cattle, I think those are the big ones. I can't think of really anything else. So anything that you get for the interagency agreement that is going to be non-hand labor, you're going to go out there and we will not issue a permit because we do not have the legal authority to do so. The only thing that we're going to do out there is we are going to do an inspection. And when we do that inspection, everything gets sent back to me. And then you would get paid directly from DEO for that inspection. You can ask them to complete the application. You can fill out the calculation sheets because a lot of them we're finding, you know, they're using the same housing over and over again. So that way you can keep all of the information that you have from the years before, because you are not required to complete the calculation sheets every single year. You have to verify that nothing has changed, but we're not going to make you measure the windows and the floors and everything every single year. If you go out and the housing has already been approved and you've already done all the measurements, you just verify everything's the same. And there's a sheet on the there's a space on the calculation forms that you just sign and say that you verified everything, and the capacity is going to stay the same. You would have to wait specifically from the email from the DCEH MOU, because we don't have the legal authority to be inside that housing without the request from DEO. So anything that is hand labor, you can go ahead and get the application and do the inspections and permit the facility. But if it is non-hand labor, you need to wait for the request from me or the email account, because that's what gives us the authority to be in there, is DEO asking for us to go out and inspect the housing. So some of the questions that I got from the CHDs are when the camp owners rent dormitories or barracks, sleeping space for other crew leaders or other people not associated with their personal farm, would you do multiple permits? And the answer for that is no. So if you have a traditional housing migrant labor camp, and say, you know, we have huge camps in Florida where, you know, there are 500 people or there are 1,000 people. Some of our farmers are using their camps as an additional way to make money. So, you know, the farm itself is the one that's responsible for the camp, and they will have a contract with the farm labor contractor letting them use it. So we are concerned with the housing itself. We don't track the workers. That's DEO's job to track the workers. We're just giving them the capacity and how many people are allowed to live there. So if it is a traditional camp associated with a farm, you're just going to issue the one camp permit like you always do, and then it'll be up to the farmer to regulate and get contracts for their housing. The difference is in a hotel. So years ago, we were having a lot of issues with the hotel owner being the one that would come in, they would pay for the permit, and they would permit the entire hotel for migrant housing. When they would do that, some of the unsavory hotel owners were selling the permit to any grower that said they wanted to put their workers in there. And the Department of Labor would go out and they would do these investigations, inspections, whatever. And what they realized is all of these workers are gone, because the farm labor contractor would show up and the hotel owner's like, yeah, sorry, there's no room here. All the rooms are full. Nobody else can stay. So we don't issue permits to the hotel anymore. So we issue the permits directly to the farm labor contractor, and we may have multiple permits within one hotel. That is totally acceptable. That way we can track whether or not the hotel is full, and if we can still put workers in that hotel. We have already had several issues in counties where DEO is like, hey, this hotel's already full. We have a contractor that's trying to use it. You know, can you verify, or do the dates cross over, anything like that? So if you have a hotel and you have a farm labor contractor that wants to put his workers in the hotel, the permit is going to be for the amount of rooms only, and then you would do the capacity off of that. So is there any questions on that? Yeah, see, we're going to be done quick. When I gave it to the department folks, they talked the whole time. Okay, so one of the questions that came across is, if you have a facility apply in July and August because they need workers in September, are you charging them just for September, like August and September, and then you recharge them again in October? So with this, if they have never had a permit before and it is brand new housing and they need their workers to be there in September, then yes, you would have to charge them the permit fee. I don't believe there's prorated fees in the migrant housing program. So you would charge them for however many workers they were gonna have, and then you would have to go through the process to re-permit them in October, because statutorily the permit's going to expire September 30th. If this is housing that has already been permitted and they have a current migrant housing permit, all you would have to do is update the growing season dates to reflect that the camp is occupied in September, and they would be fine. And then you would have to do your pre-licensing inspection, make sure that all the violations are corrected, and then their permit can be issued for the next year in October. And then for the rest, I just have common stuff that I run into and people have run into during inspections. And so here is a traditional, you will see this all of the time when you go in and you do an inspection. So since nobody seems like they want to talk and everybody wants to stay muted, I'll just tell you guys what's wrong and what's right in this picture. So when you have a migrant camp, since these workers are coming in from other countries, that you are required to provide bedding for them, or the camp, not us. So the camps are required to provide bedding. So they have to have a pillow, they have to have a pillowcase, they have to have a sheet, and they have to have a blanket. Typically, the workers are going to provide their own blankets. You know, blankets are a personal thing. Some will travel with pillows, most won't. A mattress cover is not required in the migrant program. The only time that a camp owner is going to be required to put a mattress cover on the mattress is if, well, they can do it if they want because it helps with bed bugs. But if there was a rip or a tear in the mattress and it wasn't really egregious, you could put a mattress cover on it and the mattress would still be viable and still could be used during the inspections. If there's like a spring poking out, or if the mattress is just so gross and so soiled, you're going to make them replace the mattress, because it, you know, the mattress cover is just to protect on little things. So if the mattress is really gross, you're going to make them get rid of it and get a new one. They shouldn't have food on the floor. We're not going to be able to stop them from having food in their rooms. If you don't want it opened, you don't want it to look like it could be a harborage issue. So if you're seeing anything that they have open food sitting around, you know, that's certainly a problem. But here, you would just want the food off the floor. You don't want anything open. The camps are required to provide a place for the workers to put their personal belongings. So see how this is, there's a like a Rubbermaid tub back there. That's actually totally acceptable. The Department of Labor said they are 100% okay with that being a place to put their belongings. So if you go into a camp and there's a lot of those Rubbermaid, you know, Tupperware things across the room, that is certainly acceptable, but they have to have something. You can't just put the workers in there and give them absolutely nowhere to put their stuff. So here, how you see like multiple things plugged in, and you see wires everywhere. For that, and I always tell people, you always want to do your pre-licensing inspections with code enforcement or with the fire marshal, because you want to make sure they're in compliance with everything. So all those electrical cords, that would be considered a fire hazard, but that was repealed out of our rule. But we don't have the authority. We don't have the authority for smoke detectors, and I see that a lot on camp inspections, that the camps are being written up for smoke detectors. That was repealed in 2016. There's nothing we can do about it. So if it's an issue in the camp, you want to be able to turn it into the agency that would be able to do something about it. Oh, and this one I already showed you. This one was just, I just love this picture. I couldn't believe I ran into this. Now, granted, the county it was in, this was a mobile home and it had been vacant for a pretty significant amount of time. This was in the kitchen, but I was like, man, I have to get a picture of that, and I'm going to use it in every training I give because it's so amazing. A lot of times now we have a lot of staff turnover. In a perfect world, every single migrant inspector that we had for the Florida Department of Health would be certified in septic. This is not a perfect world. So I like to, a lot of the trainings that I do, I like to show what a violation in septic would look like. This is a plumbing line under the home that was cut and sewage is leaking everywhere. They had tried to clean it, so it's the light brown color because they had lined it before. So, you know, make sure when you have new inspectors that you're letting everyone, you know, you're telling them about the septic issues, you're telling them about water issues, because these are going to be a lot of the problems that you're going to run into in a migrant labor camp. But this was definitely sewage on the ground. We failed this. It's an automatic unsatisfactory if you have sewage on the ground. They fixed it. We came out the next day, and then they passed over. So this one is another one we run into all the time. The reason I included this is because the screen actually does not cover the entire window. If the windows can open up, they're required to have the screens in the window. In the rule, it says that 10% of the window area has to be able to open for ventilation purposes. Well, one of the things that we do now, because most hotels do not have windows that open, if you have an HVAC system in your camp, you are not required to have the windows open for ventilation. The Department of Labor has approved that, so that is the way that we move forward now. So if there is no AC, because air conditioning is not required in camps, only heat is required in camps. So if there's no air conditioning, the windows all have to open. It has to meet the 10% area of the floor space, and they have to be completely screened so that bugs and vermin are not getting into the camp. So if you were to see this, and you know, there are people that have written up in the past that, you know, the screen needs to be fixed, and then they pass a pre-licensing inspection, just this screen right here would cause a pre-licensing inspection to fail. Because with your pre-licensing, you cannot have any violations. And if you have a screen that is not completely fitting the window and mosquitoes can come in and spread disease and bite our workers while they're sleeping, it's a problem. So this is what bed bugs look like. So all these little black spots are dry blood. You need to make sure that when you are out and you are doing any kind of housing inspection that you are looking at the mattresses and that you are looking for bed bugs. You want to check any types of seams, any this, all around here. You can even look at the floor, like around the base of the bed. They hide in picture frames. You can look up in the corners. They like to be in corners of the rooms, and if you look at the top, they could just be sitting up at the top. Bed bugs can go for a pretty significant amount of time without feeding. So just because a camp is empty for a month does not mean they got rid of their bed bugs. Any type of extermination or pesticide done in a migrant camp is required to be done by a licensed pest control person. You need to also keep in mind that they have lots of pesticide application people certified for the camp, for the fields. they typically do not have the same residential pesticide application certifications. So unless the worker that is applying the pesticides in the camp has the residential one, they can't just use their field pesticide certifications. So you need to make sure they are using a licensed pest control company to get rid of whatever infestation they have. And here's an actual bed bug. To me, they look like little baby roaches. If you see not the blood, but you actually see the bed bug, you have a pretty good infestation. So that's what they look like. They are worse to get rid of than lice, so tread carefully. So here is another pretty important violation that I wanted to point out. You cannot have washing machines in migrant housing discharging onto the ground. They are required by law to be connected into the septic system or county sewer, whatever they have. Gray water in Florida has to be connected to a septic system. So if you are out and you are doing inspections and you see a washing machine that is discharging directly onto the ground, that would be an automatic unsatisfactory during your inspection. Another issue would be these stairs. You are required to have ingress and egress into a facility. If the stairs are not safe, if they're not sturdy, that would actually also be another unsatisfactory. So anything ingress or egress is required to be sturdy and safe so the workers don't get hurt going in and out of the facility. So this one, so the reason why I included this picture is because they had a pretty significant water leak in their ceiling. They fixed the leak, they put the plywood up. For me, if this is just the top, now granted, if that's mold, that's something totally different. But if that was just dirt from stuff that's coming out of the attic, I'm not failing an inspection for this. Does somebody have a question? Sounds like somebody's unmuted. Anybody have a question?
Hey, I have a question, Andrea.
Sure.
The washing machine outside, would that also be an electrical hazard? Possibly.
Well, so for us, we don't really, it just says that they have to apply or comply with local code. So it could be, yeah. I mean, if they didn't have like the outdoor plug, which more than likely they're not going to, yes, but that would be another reason why you would do your pre-licensing with code enforcement, because they're the ones that would handle that violation.
Thanks.
But yeah, great question. So for me, on this one, if they fix the leak, if they fix the ceiling, and there was no danger that the worker was going to get hurt, I would write it up as a violation that they would have to like clean the walls and whatever, but they could rip all that off and repaint at the pre-licensing, and I would be okay with that. I would not be okay, obviously, if the ceiling was still busted up or if the water leak was still happening, but they completely fixed the leak. It didn't smell like mold in this house. It didn't, everything appeared to be done. So I just documented on the form that the walls would need to be fixed during the pre-licensing inspection, but I did not fail the inspection for this. All right. Let's see, I'm getting close to the end with my pictures. Let's see. So this one, I included, and this was just to show, in this picture, there are no violations. So if you were in a camp, and this actually was family housing, so this was just one family that lived in like this little apartment. And this was, I got half the mom in the shot. So this was just a mom that was cooking for her family. And so we traditionally in migrant housing, if you have a camp that's going to go and do the ratios and they're not going to have a permitted kitchen, we're going to treat it like a tier 1 in an assisted living facility or whatever. These are somebody's home. So you would, anything that was, you know, really egregious, like if you walk in and you're seeing kitchen or chicken sitting on the kitchen counter, that's a big one. Eggs that started out refrigerated, but they don't, that's culturally, they're getting their eggs straight from the farm, so they don't have to refrigerate them. So they don't understand that once you buy them and they've been refrigerated, they have to stay refrigerated in America. So all of these are teachable moments for our workers, but we aren't necessarily going to write up violations for this. You're going to make notations on it. But if the refrigerator is broken, then that's going to be a violation because the grower isn't providing an appliance that's usable to the workers in the house. So, you know, it was really interesting because, you know, everybody was like shouting out what they thought violations were and everything, but there's actually no violations here. So that's one of the things that I wanted to point out. And this is one of the worst camps I have ever been to in the entire state of Florida. This housing obviously was never approved. We started this as an unlicensed housing investigation. In several rooms in this mobile home, they had holes that just went straight to the ground where the workers like would drink a soda and then throw their soda right through the hole so it went on the floor. So you can't provide a kitchen that looks like this. So if you ever run across anything like this and the cabinets are all busted up and the stove didn't actually work, I can't remember if the water actually worked there or not, but it really, when I left this facility, I think all of us went to our respective homes and took a shower because this was one of the grossest housing situations I have ever been in, and I was just appalled at how these workers were being treated. And let's see, so, and here's my last one, and this one was just fun for me. I just had a county reach out to me and they were like, what do we do with this? So this would be considered harborage. I said, walk in the bus to make sure they don't have any workers living in there because that can happen sometimes. But this one was found during a pre-licensing inspection and we made them get rid of that bus before we would issue the permit. And it had roosters and chickens and all kinds of things running around in there. So, so that was a violation. And then really that's all I had. So it's 1:30. So do you guys have any questions for me? You want to get out a half hour early? Well, let me see if I can see the chat. Tracy, yeah, they're so Tracy, I said I didn't do any slides because I don't have them approved. So they haven't made it all the way through communications, and since it's just not department people, I couldn't share my presentation. I'm following the rules because we're on the call. Stephanie, are the petitions 7 calendar days or 7 business days? Oh, that's a good question, Stephanie. I'll have to look. I think it's 7 business days, but I'm not sure. I'll have to check. That last pic looks like one of my college departments. I think that was it. Okay. Anybody else? You guys want to unmute yourself? Do you have any questions? You're welcome, Tracy. All right, Chris, I think I'm done.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Andrea. I appreciate it. Is there any questions for any of our presenters? All right. So the certificate is actually going to be emailed out to you here in about 5 minutes. You'll get an email with it. You'll have to print it out and put your own name on it. It's not going to have your name on it, so keep that in mind. The callers, I have 4 people on here that says caller 1234. If you can put in the chat who you are, or actually, I guess you have to announce yourself, or if you can email me, info@feha.org to let me know that you're on the call. I did take roll call off the list here, but like I said, there's about 4 people who are on the phone instead, so if you can just email info@feha.org and let me know. Other than that, check your email in about 5 minutes and you'll have the certificate. So thank you all for attending. Please be sure that if you did not submit all of your contact hours yet, you need to do so by the 31st, and you need to pay your RS hours. Everybody should have been getting emails. If you have an RS credential and you are not getting emails from me, that's a problem. Please email me as well at info@feha.org, and we'll get that taken care of. But please get on there and pay that. Do not let your RS lapse. It is a big pain in the butt. You'll have to go through if you don't submit all of your hours and pay for your renewal. All right, so thank you very much, and stay tuned for future webinars from FEHA.